1 month after my wife Claudette died, I hired a contractor to renovate her old office. I had just arrived at the church for her memorial service when the contractor called me. His voice was shaking so hard I could barely understand him. He said, "Jeremiah, listen to me very carefully. Do not come here alone. Bring your 2 sons. You all need to see this." When we arrived at the building, my heart nearly stopped. The wall was broken open, and what was behind it changed everything I thought I knew about the woman I had slept next to for 40 years. Before I tell you what we found inside that wall, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you have ever felt like the people you love the most are wearing masks. My name is Jeremiah Blackwood. I am 69 years old, and this is the story of how I lost my wife but found a truth that shattered my family. It was raining that morning. The kind of cold gray rain that seeps into your bones and makes your joints ache. I stood in the entrance of the Grace Baptist Church, smoothing the lapel of my black suit. It was the 30-day memorial for Claudette. 30 days since the doctor said her heart just stopped. 30 days of silence in a house that used to be filled with her humming. I was the first one there. I was always the first one there. I checked my watch. 10 in the morning. The service was starting in 5 minutes and my sons were nowhere to be seen. I watched the cars passing by on the wet pavement, feeling a familiar tightening in my chest. It wasn't grief. I knew grief. Grief was a heavy blanket. This was different. This was anger. A silver Mercedes swerved into the parking lot, splashing muddy water onto the sidewalk. I didn't have to look at the license plate to know who it was. My oldest son Tyrell and his wife Courtney. They parked crooked, taking up 2 spaces. Tyrell got out first, fumbling with his umbrella. He looked disheveled. His tie was loose, and he was checking his phone before he even looked at the church. Then Courtney stepped out. She was a tall woman with sharp features and eyes that always seemed to be calculating the value of everything she looked at. She wasn't wearing black. She was wearing a dark navy dress that looked more appropriate for a business lunch than a memorial service for her mother-in-law. My younger son Kendrick pulled up a moment later in his beat-up sedan. He sat in the car for a long moment, rubbing his face. When he finally got out, he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were bloodshot, and he wouldn't look at me. They walked up the steps together, a trio of disappointment I had raised and welcomed into my family. "Hey, Pop," Tyrell said, not making eye contact. Traffic was a nightmare. "It is Sunday morning, Tyrell," I said, keeping my voice level. "There is no traffic." Courtney sighed loudly, snapping her umbrella shut and shaking the water off dangerously close to my shoes. "Oh, Jeremiah, let's not start with the lectures. We are here, aren't we? Honestly, this whole 30-day tradition seems a bit excessive. We already had the funeral. How much did you spend on the flowers inside?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman my son had married 10 years ago, the woman who had slowly isolated him from us. "I spent what was necessary." "Courtney," I said. "Claudette loved lilies." Courtney rolled her eyes. "Lilies die, Jeremiah, just like people. It is a waste of money. Money that could be used for the living. You know, Tyrell and I have been looking at that property in the hills. We could have used that flower budget for the down payment." I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. My wife had been gone a month, and they were already counting my pennies. They thought I was a retired engineer living on a fixed pension. They thought the small house Claudette and I lived in was all there was. They had no idea about the logistics company I built and sold quietly 20 years ago. They had no idea about the trust funds. They saw a black man in an old suit and saw a burden. "Let's just get this over with," Kendrick muttered, pushing past us into the church. "I have to be somewhere at noon." "You have to be somewhere?" I asked, turning to look at my youngest. "This is your mother." "Yeah." "Well, Mom isn't going anywhere, is she?" Kendrick snapped. I watched them walk into the sanctuary. They didn't go to the front row. They didn't go to the altar to pay respects. They sat in the 3rd row, pulling out their phones immediately. I stood there alone at the door, feeling a profound sense of failure. I had built bridges that spanned rivers, but I hadn't been able to build men out of my sons. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. I didn't want to be like them. It vibrated again, long, persistent. I pulled it out, annoyed. It was Mr. Henderson. He was a good man, a contractor Claudette had known since high school. I had hired him 3 days ago to clean out and repaint Claudette's private office downtown. She had kept that office for years, even after she retired from her teaching job. She said she needed a place to write, a place to think. I never went there. I respected her privacy. I answered the phone, whispering, "Henderson, I am at the memorial. This is not a good time." "Jeremiah." His voice stopped me cold. Henderson was a big man, a loud man. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. "Jeremiah, you need to listen to me. Where are the boys?" "They are here," I said, frowning. "Why?" "Don't ask questions," Henderson said. His breath was coming in short gasps. "I was taking down the drywall on the north side, the one behind the bookshelf. Jeremiah, there is a room." "A room?" I asked, confused. "The office is only 400 square feet." "No, there is a room behind the wall. And there is a safe, and Jeremiah, there is a note taped to it with your name on it." "A note? Yes, but that is not why I'm calling. You need to come here. Now. And you need to bring Tyrell and Kendrick." "Why do I need to bring them, Henderson?" "Because the note." Henderson paused, and I could hear the rain hammering against the roof of the office building on his end. "The note says, 'Do not open without the witnesses.' It names them Jeremiah. It names your sons." I hung up the phone. The air in the church suddenly felt too thin. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. A secret room. A note. Witnesses. Claudette was a school teacher. She liked gardening and gospel music. What was Henderson talking about? I walked into the sanctuary. The organist was playing a soft prelude. Tyrell was showing Courtney something on his phone, and she was laughing. A quiet, cruel laugh. "Get up," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of decades of authority. Tyrell jumped. "Tyrell." Courtney looked up, her smile vanishing. "What is it, Dad?" Tyrell asked. "Is it your heart?" "Get up," I repeated. "We are leaving." "Leaving?" Courtney scoffed. "The service hasn't even started. You were just complaining that we were late, and now you want to leave. You really are losing it, Jeremiah. I told you, Tyrell, he is getting senile." I stepped into the pew. I didn't touch them, but I leaned in close enough that they could smell the Old Spice and the rain on my jacket. "Mr. Henderson just called. He found something in your mother's office. He says we all need to be there. Now move." Kendrick looked up from his phone, his eyes narrowing. "What did he find?" "Cash. Did Mom have cash hidden in there?" The greed in his voice was so naked it made me sick. "I don't know what he found," I said. "But if you want to know, you will get in the car." We took my truck. I didn't want to ride in their fancy cars, and I didn't want them separated. I wanted them where I could see them. Courtney complained the entire way. She said the truck smelled like oil and old men. She said I was ruining her Sunday. She said she had a brunch reservation at Le Mans that she was going to miss. Tyrell sat in the passenger seat, tapping his fingers nervously on his knee. Kendrick was in the back, biting his fingernails. Neither of them asked about their mother. Neither of them asked what Henderson might have found. They were only calculating. I could see the gears turning in their heads. If there was money, they wanted it. If there was debt, they would run. The drive to the downtown district took 20 minutes. The rain had turned into a storm. Thunder rattled the windows of the truck. The sky was a bruised purple, turning the midday into twilight. We pulled up to the old brick building where Claudette had rented her space. It was a nondescript building sandwiched between a bakery and a laundromat. I had offered to buy her a better space years ago in one of the glass towers, but she had refused. She said she liked the obscurity. She said she liked being invisible. I parked the truck. "This is a dump," Courtney sneered, looking out the window. "Why did she even keep this place? She hasn't taught a class in 10 years. It was just a waste of your pension, Jeremiah." "Get out," I said, killing the engine. The front door of the building was unlocked. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Henderson was a professional. He never left doors unlocked. We walked down the narrow hallway to Unit 4B. The door to the office was wide open. I stepped inside first. The smell of dust and old paper hit me. The room was stripped bare. Henderson had already removed the old desk and the filing cabinets. The carpet had been ripped up, exposing the concrete underneath. But my eyes went straight to the back wall. The drywall had been smashed open with a sledgehammer. A jagged hole about 6 feet high and 4 feet wide gaped like a wound in the room. Henderson was standing next to it. He was covered in white dust, but his face was gray. He held a sledgehammer in one hand, but he was gripping it like a weapon, like he was afraid of what might come out of the darkness. "Mr. Henderson," Tyrell said, stepping around me, his voice full of arrogance. "What is this about? My father dragged us out of a memorial service because you found a hole in a wall." Henderson didn't look at Tyrell. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and pity. I didn't want to do it, Jeremiah, he whispered. She told me to wait until you were gone, but when I hit the stud, the whole section just gave way. What are you talking about? I asked, stepping closer. Look, Henderson said, pointing into the darkness. I walked to the hole. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. It wasn't just a space between walls. It was a room. A small windowless room lined with soundproofing foam. In the center of the room sat a heavy steel table. On the table was an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, the kind they used in the 70s. And next to it sat a massive black safe. But it was what was taped to the front of the safe that made my knees weak. It was a handwritten note in blue ink. I knew that handwriting better than my own. I had read her grocery lists, her birthday cards, her love letters for 40 years. It was Claudette's handwriting, and the note said simply, Jeremiah, if you are reading this, I didn't die of a stroke. I was murdered. I felt the air leave my lungs. I reached out to touch the paper, but my hand was shaking so badly I couldn't steady it. Murdered Courtney's voice cut through the silence, shrill and incredulous. She had pushed past me to look. She read the note and let out a harsh laugh. Oh my God, she was insane. I told you, Tyrell. I told you your mother was losing it. She was paranoid, murdered. She had high blood pressure and she was fat. She died of a stroke. The doctor signed the certificate. This is just some dramatic attention-seeking from beyond the grave. Shut up, I roared. The sound of my voice bounced off the steel walls of the hidden room. Courtney took a step back, shocked. I had never raised my voice at her, not once in 10 years. I stepped into the room. The air inside was cold, stale. It smelled of ozone and secrets. I looked at the safe. It was a digital model, high-tech, expensive. Open it, Kendrick said from the doorway. His eyes were glued to the safe. He didn't care about the note. He didn't care about the murder accusation. He saw a safe, and he smelled money. I don't have the code, I said, my voice rough. She never told me about this place. Try her birthday, Tyrell suggested, or your anniversary. I tried. I punched in her birthday. Red light. I tried our anniversary. Red light. I tried the day we bought our house. Red light. Step aside, old man, Courtney said, pushing forward. She looked at the keypad. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. She punched in a series of numbers fast like she had typed them 1,000 times before. Beep, click, the green light flashed. The heavy locking mechanism clanked open. I froze. The room went dead silent. Henderson lowered his sledgehammer. Tyrell looked at his wife, his mouth open. Kendrick stopped chewing his fingernail. I turned slowly to look at my daughter-in-law. How did you know the code, Courtney? I asked. She stood there, her hand still on the handle of the safe. Her face went pale for a second, but then that mask of superiority slid back into place. It was a lucky guess, she said, shrugging. It's Tyrell's birthday backwards. She always loved him best, didn't she? I looked at Tyrell. His birthday backwards. Open it, Kendrick yelled. Courtney pulled the handle. The heavy steel door swung open on silent hinges. We all leaned in. I expected to see stacks of cash. I expected to see gold. I expected to see the inheritance my sons were so desperate for. But the safe was empty. Completely empty except for a single small black USB drive sitting in the center of the metal shelf. Courtney let out a scream of frustration. It's empty. Are you kidding me? All this drama for an empty box. She is laughing at us. She is literally laughing at us from hell. She reached in and grabbed the USB drive. She held it up like it was a piece of trash. This is it. This is the big secret. Probably just photos of her cats. Give that to me, I said, holding out my hand. Courtney looked at the drive, then at me. Her eyes narrowed. No. You know what, Jeremiah? I think we are done here. I think this proves that Claudette was not in her right mind. And frankly, I am starting to doubt if you are either. We are taking this, we are going to see what is on it, and then we are going to have a serious talk about your living arrangements. You can't live in that house alone anymore. She tried to put the drive in her purse. I moved faster than I had moved in 20 years. I grabbed her wrist. I didn't squeeze hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to let her know I wasn't the weak old man she thought I was. I said, "Give it to me, Courtney." Tyrell stepped forward. "Hey, get your hands off her, Dad. You are hurting her." I didn't let go. I looked Courtney in the eye. I saw the fear flicker there just for a second behind the arrogance. "This was my wife's office," I said. "That is my wife's safe, and that is my property. Now drop it." She opened her hand. The drive fell into my palm. I let her go. She rubbed her wrist, glaring at me with pure hatred. "You are going to regret that," she hissed. "You are going to regret that when you are rotting in the cheapest nursing home I can find." I put the drive in my pocket. I turned to Henderson. "Close this up," I said. "Don't let anyone back in here. Change the locks." I walked past my sons. I didn't look at them. I walked out into the rain, which was falling harder now, washing the dust of the tomb off my shoes. I got in my truck and locked the doors. I drove home alone, leaving them standing on the sidewalk in the storm. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark in the living room holding the USB drive. I knew I couldn't listen to it yet. I knew that whatever was on this drive was going to destroy the last shred of hope I had that my family was decent. My phone rang. It was Tyrell. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. "Kendrick." Voicemail. Then a text came through from Courtney. "We are coming over. We have the papers for the power of attorney. Tyrell says you need to sign them tonight. For your own good. For my own good." I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady now. The anger had settled into something cold and hard like iron. I went to my study. I pulled out my old laptop, the one I kept offline, the one I used for my real business accounts. I plugged in the USB drive. A single audio file popped up. It was labeled simply, "The Truth About the Insulin." I stared at the screen. Claudette was diabetic. She took insulin every day. I put on my headphones. I clicked play. And my wife's voice filled the room, whispering from the grave, and what she said made me realize that the war hadn't ended with her death. The war had just begun. The dust from the dry wall hung in the air like a thick white fog, making it hard to breathe inside that cramped hidden space. I stepped fully into the room, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. It was not just the dampness of the old building. It was the chill of a secret that had been kept in the dark for too long. My sons Tyrell and Kendrick crowded in behind me, and I could hear their shallow breathing. The room was claustrophobic, no bigger than a prison cell lined with soundproofing foam that had turned yellow and brittle with age. Henderson, the contractor, stood in the corner, still gripping his sledgehammer, his knuckles white. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. I looked around the space, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. My wife, Claudette, was a woman of simple tastes. She liked her garden. She liked her Sunday choir. She liked her tea with 2 sugars. She did not build secret bunkers behind office walls. In the center of the room sat a heavy steel table bolted to the floor. On top of it sat an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, the kind you see in movies from the 70s, with large spools of magnetic tape. Next to it was a stack of notebooks and a pair of high-quality headphones. It looked like a surveillance station. "What is this place?" Tyrell whispered. His voice was trembling. I turned to look at my oldest son. He was sweating. Beads of perspiration were forming on his forehead despite the cold air in the room. He was staring at the tape recorder with a look of absolute terror. It was not the confusion I expected. It was recognition. He knew what that machine was, or he was terrified of what it might have recorded. "Why did Mom have this?" Tyrell asked, his voice cracking. He reached out a hand toward the machine but pulled it back as if it were hot. "This does not make sense." "She was a teacher, Dad. She was just a teacher." Kendrick was pacing the small space, kicking at the debris on the floor. "Where's the money?" he muttered. "You said there was a safe, Henderson. I do not see any cash. This is just a room full of junk." I watched them both. My sons, one terrified of a machine and the other blinded by greed. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me, but I pushed it down. I needed to be sharp. Henderson cleared his throat. The sound was loud in the dead air of the room. He reached into the pocket of his dusty work vest. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped the piece of paper he was holding. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his voice raspy. "Before we open the safe, you need to see this. I found it taped to the side of the desk. It fell off when I broke the wall." He handed me a folded piece of yellow-lined paper. It was not an official document. It was a page torn from a legal pad. I took it. The paper felt fragile in my big, rough hands. I unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was the same script that had signed my birthday cards for 40 years, but the letters were jagged, hurried, as if she had written it in a panic. I read the words, and the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "My dear Jeremiah, if you are standing in this room reading this note, then I am gone. And if I am gone, it was not an accident. And it was not natural causes. Do not trust the doctor. Do not trust the death certificate. And Jeremiah, whatever you do, do not trust the boys. They are watching me. I think they are going to kill me. I stood there frozen. The silence in the room was deafening. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Murder. She wrote the word murder. What does it say? Courtney demanded. Her voice was sharp, cutting through my shock. She stepped closer, invading my personal space. What did she write, Jeremiah? Why do you look like that? I did not answer. I could not speak. I just handed the note to Tyrell. He took it. He read it. And I saw the color drain from his face until he looked like a corpse. His hands shook so violently the paper rattled. Oh my God, he whispered. Oh my God, she knew. Courtney snatched the paper from his hand. Her eyes scanned the lines rapidly. Then she let out a screech of laughter that sounded more like a bark. This is ridiculous, she shouted. She waved the paper in the air like a flag. This proves it. This proves everything I've been saying for years. She was insane, Jeremiah. She was paranoid and delusional. Look at this. She thought we were going to kill her. Who writes this? A crazy person writes this. She crumpled the paper in her fist. She had a stroke, Courtney yelled, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. She had a stroke because she was old and sick, and now she is trying to guilt-trip us from the grave with these insane ramblings. I am not going to let her ruin our reputation. I am not going to let her ruin Tyrell's future with this garbage. She made a move as if to tear the paper in half. No, I roared. I moved with a speed that surprised even me. I grabbed Courtney by the wrist. My grip was iron. I had worked with steel and concrete my whole life. I might be 69, but I still had the strength of a man who built things with his hands. Let go of it, Courtney, I growled. You are hurting me, she screamed, pulling back. Tyrell, do something. Your father is assaulting me. Tyrell just stood there paralyzed, staring at the wall. He did not move to help his wife. He did not move to help his father. He was useless. I tightened my grip. I looked Courtney in the eye. I saw the fear there behind the arrogance. I saw the panic of a woman who was losing control of the narrative. That is evidence, I said, my voice low and dangerous. That is my wife's last words. And if you tear it, I will break your wrist. She gasped and opened her hand. The crumpled ball of paper fell into my palm. I shoved her away from me. She stumbled back, hitting the wall hard. You are all crazy, she hissed, rubbing her wrist. The whole family is toxic. No wonder she went mad in this little room. I smoothed out the note carefully, trying to flatten the creases. I folded it and put it in my inside jacket pocket right next to my heart. We are not done here, I said. I turned to the safe. It was a massive black steel box bolted to the floor in the corner under the desk. It was an old model, but it looked secure. It had a digital keypad. Open it, Kendrick said, his voice greedy again. Maybe she kept the cash in there. If she was crazy, maybe she pulled all the money out of the bank and hid it here. Come on, Dad, open it. I stared at the keypad. I had no idea what the code was. Claudette had never mentioned this room, never mentioned a safe. We shared everything, or so I thought. I do not know the code, I said. Try her birthday, Tyrell said, his voice hollow. I tried. Nothing. Red light. Try your anniversary, Courtney snapped. I tried. Red light. The keypad beeped an angry warning tone. One more wrong try and it would likely lock us out for good. I stood there helpless. I looked at the safe and felt a wave of despair. I was so close to the truth, but I was locked out. Then Tyrell spoke up. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the safe, his eyes glazed over. Try 041280, he whispered. I turned to him. What? 041280, he repeated. Just try it. I looked at him suspicious. That was not a random number. That was a specific sequence. I turned back to the safe. I punched in the numbers slowly. 0, 4, 1, 2, 8, 0. The keypad beeped. A happy chirp. The heavy locking mechanism clicked and the handle popped out an inch. The room went silent again. Even Kendrick stopped moving. I did not open the door yet. I turned slowly to face my oldest son. Tyrell. I said, my voice very quiet. Why did that code work? He looked up at me and I saw the guilt written all over his face. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar, but the stakes were life and death. It is Courtney's birthday, he mumbled. April 12th, 1980. I looked at Courtney. She had gone pale. Her mouth was open in a silent circle of shock. Why, I asked, feeling the anger rising in my throat like bile. Why would your mother's secret safe be locked with your wife's birthday? Tyrell swallowed hard. Because he stammered. Because Mom didn't set the code. Dad. I did. You did. Yes, Tyrell said, tears starting to well up in his eyes. About 6 months ago. She asked me to help her with the lock. She said her arthritis was bad and she couldn't program it. She asked me to pick a number I would remember. So I picked Courtney's birthday. I stared at him. It sounded plausible. It sounded like something Claudette might do, ask her son for help. But the note in my pocket burned against my chest. Do not trust the boys. If she asked you to set the code, I said, stepping closer to him, then you knew about this room. You knew about the safe. And you never told me. She asked me not to. Tyrell cried. She made me promise. She said it was a surprise for your anniversary. She said she was saving up for a big trip for you two. Lies. I could smell the lies on him. They smelled like sour sweat and expensive cologne. And you, Courtney, I said, turning to her, did you know about this? No, she said too quickly. I didn't know anything. Tyrell never tells me anything. I looked at the safe again. The green light was blinking, inviting me to open the door. I reached out and grabbed the cold steel handle. I pulled. The heavy door swung open on silent, well-oiled hinges. We all leaned in. Kendrick pushed forward, his eyes wide. Courtney craned her neck. Tyrell covered his face with his hands as if he couldn't bear to see what was inside. I expected stacks of cash. I expected jewelry. I expected the family silver. But the safe was almost empty. There was no money. There were no gold bars. There were no property deeds. Sitting alone in the center of the metal shelf was a single small black USB drive. That was it. Courtney let out a sound of pure frustration.
Are you kidding me? She shrieked. That is it? A flash drive?
Flash. Where is the money, Tyrell? You said she was hoarding money. I grabbed the USB drive before anyone else could touch it. It was small, cold, and light. It felt insignificant in my hand, but I knew in my gut that it weighed more than the building we were standing in. I put it in my pocket. That is it, I said. We are leaving. Wait, Kendrick shouted. Check the back. Maybe there is a false bottom. I checked. There was nothing. Just cold steel. I looked at my family. The disappointment on their faces was sickening. They were not disappointed that their mother was scared or that she had secrets. They were disappointed that she wasn't rich. I ushered them out of the room. Henderson stayed behind to seal it up. I told him to weld the door shut. As we walked out into the rain, Courtney grabbed Tyrell's arm and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, looking terrified. I did not ask what she said. I did not care. I had the note. I had the drive. And I had the look on my son's face when he realized that his mother's secrets were about to come out. I drove home in silence. The rain beat against the windshield like a drum. When I got home, I went straight to my study. I locked the door. I sat down at my desk and pulled out the USB drive. My hands were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold, hard determination. I plugged the drive into my computer. A folder popped up on the screen. It contained a series of audio files, dozens of them, all dated over the last 6 months. I clicked on the most recent file. It was dated 2 days before Claudette died. I put on my headphones. The sound of my wife's voice filled my ears. She was whispering. She sounded scared. Jeremiah, if you are listening to this, I do not have much time. Courtney was here today. She brought me a new batch of insulin. She said the pharmacy changed suppliers and the bottles looked different. But after I took it, I felt dizzy. My heart started racing. I kept the empty bottle, Jeremiah. I hid it in the garage inside the old paint can on the top shelf. Please check it. I think it isn't insulin. The recording ended with the sound of a door opening and Claudette gasping in fear. I sat there in the dark, my heart breaking all over again. Insulin. She was diabetic. She needed it to live. I stood up. I ran to the garage. I tore through the shelves, knocking over boxes of nails and old tools. I found the paint can. I pried off the lid, and there it was. A small glass vial with the label half torn off. I picked it up. I read the tiny print on the remaining label. It was not insulin. It was a concentrated dose of potassium chloride, the kind of drug they use to stop a heart during surgery, or to kill someone without leaving a trace if you don't do an autopsy. I fell to my knees on the concrete floor, clutching the little bottle. A scream built up in my throat, a sound of pure grief and rage. They killed her. My son and his wife killed my Claudette, and now I was going to make sure they paid for it. Every single one of them. The heavy steel door swung all the way back, hitting the wall with a dull thud. We all leaned in our shadows, stretching across the empty metal shelves. I could hear Kendrick holding his breath, waiting for the glint of gold or the green of stacked bills. But there was nothing. No stacks of cash, no velvet bags of diamonds, no deeds to properties. Just cold, empty gray steel. And sitting right in the center on the middle shelf like a bad joke was a single small black USB drive. Courtney let out a sound that was half laugh, half scream. She shoved past Tyrell and peered into the safe, her hands gripping the frame. "Is this it?" she shrieked. "A thumb drive? Are you kidding me? Where is the money, Tyrell? You said she was hoarding cash from her pension. You said she was hiding thousands in here." Tyrell looked like he was about to vomit. "I don't know," he stammered. "She told me she was saving. She told me. She lied." Courtney spat, turning on her heel to face me. Her face was twisted in ugly triumph mixed with fury. "She lied to you, Jeremiah, and she lied to us. All this drama, the secret room, the note about murder, it was all just the hallucinations of a sick old woman. She wasn't scared for her life. She was just crazy and broke." She pointed a manicured finger at my chest. "Look at you," she sneered. "You dragged us out here in the rain for this, for a piece of plastic. You and Claudette were perfect for each other. Two paranoid old fools playing spy games because you didn't have two nickels to rub together. God, this is pathetic." I reached into the safe and grabbed the USB drive. My hand closed around it tight. It was small, but it felt hot against my skin. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, letting her venom wash over me. "So that is it then," Kendrick said, kicking the leg of the steel table. "No inheritance, no payout, just wasted time." Courtney took a deep breath, smoothing down her expensive dress. She looked around the dusty, cramped room, and her eyes landed on me again. But this time the rage was gone, replaced by something colder, something calculating. "Well, Jeremiah," she said, her voice dropping to that fake sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "Since there is no cash, we need to talk about assets. Real assets." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice rasping. I sounded old. I felt old. "I mean this building," she said, gesturing to the walls, "and the house, and whatever else you have left before you squander it all on nonsense like secret rooms. Look at you, Jeremiah. You are shaking. You are confused. You are clearly not capable of managing your own affairs anymore." She stepped closer, blocking the exit. "Tyrell and I have been talking. We think it is best if we sell this building immediately. The market is hot downtown. We can get a good price. And since Claudette is gone, and you are obviously declining, we should handle the sale." "Declining," I repeated. "Is that what you call grieving?" "Call it what you want," she said, shrugging. "The point is, you are not fit. You are seeing conspiracies where there are none. You are erratic. We are doing this for your own good, Jeremiah. We are going to list the building on Monday. We will take the proceeds and put them in a managed trust for your care. Tyrell will be the trustee, of course." I looked at Tyrell. "My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The man I helped through college." He wouldn't look at me. He was staring at his shoes, studying the dust on the leather. "Tyrell," I said softly, "is this what you want? You want to sell your mother's office before the paint is even dry." Tyrell shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Dad, come on." "Courtney is right. You don't need this place. It is just a money pit, and you are getting older. We just want to make sure you are taken care of." Taken care of. That was the code word. It meant controlled. It meant stripped of everything I owned. And if I say no, I asked, looking back at Courtney. She smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a shark smile. "Oh, Jeremiah, please do not make this difficult. If you say no, we will have to get the courts involved. We will have to petition for a competency hearing. We will have to bring up this whole incident, the secret room, the paranoia, the wild accusations. Do you really want to spend your last years fighting your own family in court? A judge will look at you, look at this crazy bunker, and sign the papers in 5 minutes. You will end up in a state facility, and we will get control anyway. This way is easier, cleaner." She held out her hand, palm up. "Give me the drive, Jeremiah, and give me the keys to the building. We will handle everything from here." I looked at her hand. I looked at my son's. I realized then that I was standing in a room with 3 wolves. If I fought them now, if I showed my strength, they would tear me apart. They would use their lawyers and their lies to bury me before I could find out what was on that drive. So I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hands tremble. I let the light go out of my eyes. I made myself look small. I am just so tired, I whispered, my voice shaking. I miss her so much. I don't know what to do. I saw the tension leave Tyrell's shoulders. I saw the triumphant smirk return to Courtney's face. They bought it. They saw a broken old man. It is okay, Dad, Tyrell said, stepping forward and patting my shoulder awkwardly. We know. It is a lot. Just let us help. I nodded, staring at the floor. Maybe you are right. Maybe I am not thinking clearly. I just wanted her back. I know, Courtney said, her voice dripping with condescension. Just give us the keys, Jeremiah. Go home and rest. We will call the real estate agent in the morning. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the ring of keys for the building. I dropped them into Courtney's open hand. Her fingers closed around them like a trap. Good choice, she said. Now the drive. I clutched the USB drive tighter in my other hand inside my pocket. No, I said pleadingly. Please, Courtney. Let me keep this. It probably is just photos, memories. It is all I have left of her in here. Please. She looked at me, considering. She looked at the empty safe, then at my pathetic posture. She decided I was harmless. She decided a drive full of old photos wasn't worth the fight when she had just won the building. Fine, she said, rolling her eyes. Keep your little keepsake. Just go home, Jeremiah, and do not come back here. This is our property now. I nodded, shuffling toward the door like an invalid. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for helping me. I walked past them, past Henderson, who was watching me with a confused expression past the broken wall. I walked out into the rain, my head bowed. I heard Courtney laughing behind me. I heard her say to Tyrell, "See, I told you he would fold. He is weak." I got into my truck. My hands were shaking, but not from age and not from fear. They were shaking with a rage so hot it felt like it could melt the steering wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw them walking out of the building, Courtney swinging the keys on her finger, Tyrell following like a puppy. They thought they had won. They thought they had taken my power. They had no idea that the little black drive in my pocket was a bomb, and I was just waiting for the right moment to light the fuse. I started the engine and drove away, leaving them to celebrate their victory over a ghost. But as I turned the corner, I sat up straight. The tremors in my hands stopped. The confusion cleared from my eyes. I wasn't a feeble old man. I was Jeremiah Blackwood. I had built skyscrapers. I had navigated boardrooms full of men who wanted to see me fail, and I was going to destroy them. I drove straight home. I needed to know what was on that drive. I needed to know what my wife died trying to tell me. The house was silent as a tomb. The only sound was the hum of the hard drive spinning and the relentless drumming of the rain against the window pane. I sat in my leather chair in the study, staring at the laptop screen. My reflection stared back at me, a tired old man with gray stubble and eyes rimmed with red. I looked like a ghost haunting his own life. The small black USB drive stuck out of the side of the computer like a jagged splinter. It was the only thing I had left of her. The only thing I had left of the truth. I moved the cursor to the file labeled May 12th. My hand trembled. May 12th was 3 days before Claudette collapsed in the kitchen. It was 3 days before the doctors told me her heart had given out under the strain of a massive stroke. I took a deep breath that rattled in my chest and clicked play. The sound of static filled the room, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Then her voice. It was Claudette, but not the strong singing Claudette I knew. This voice was thin, reedy, shaking with a terror I had never heard from her in 40 years of marriage. Jeremiah, she whispered through the speakers. If you are hearing this, I am gone. And if I am gone, you need to know why. I closed my eyes, letting the tears leak out hot and fast. It felt like she was in the room, standing right behind me, her hand on my shoulder. Courtney was here today, she continued, her voice gaining a little strength from anger. She came over while you were at the site inspection. She said she wanted to help organize my medications. She said I was getting confused. I told her I was fine, but she insisted. She went into the kitchen and I heard her opening the fridge. When she came back, she had my insulin case. I gripped the arms of my chair so hard the leather creaked. I could see it. I could see Courtney moving through my kitchen with that superior smile, touching things that didn't belong to her. She told me she picked up a refill for me, Claudette said. She said the pharmacy switched brands to a generic that was cheaper. She injected me Jeremiah. She insisted on doing it herself. She said my hands were too shaky. But 10 minutes after she left, my chest felt like it was on fire. My heart started beating so fast I thought it would burst. I got dizzy. I fell down. I slammed my fist onto the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I wasn't there. I was out inspecting a bridge foundation, thinking about retirement while my wife was being poisoned in our own home. I crawled to the kitchen. Claudette's voice rasped. I found the vial she used. She threw the box away, but she left the vial on the counter. It didn't look right, Jeremiah. The label was scratched off. I didn't take any more. I hid it. I was scared she would come back and find it. I hid it in the trash, Jeremiah. Not the kitchen trash. The big bin in the garage. The one we keep the shop rags in. I put it inside an old oil rag and shoved it to the bottom. Please find it. I think she is trying to kill me. The recording ended with a click. I sat there in the silence, my entire body vibrating with a rage so pure it felt like white heat. My daughter-in-law. The woman who sat at my table, who broke bread with us, who I welcomed into this family. She had injected my wife with poison and watched her suffer. And Tyrell, my son, had he known. The code to the safe was his wife's birthday. He had to know. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3:15 in the morning. The garbage truck came at 6. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over backward. Panic seized my throat. I hadn't cleared out the garage in months. Since Claudette got sick, the house had fallen into disarray. I had just been piling bags in the garage, waiting for a day when I felt strong enough to deal with it. But tomorrow was trash day. I had scheduled a bulk pickup to clear everything out. I ran out of the study down the hallway and burst into the garage. The air was cold and smelled of gasoline and mildew. The garage was a chaotic mess of boxes, old tools, and black plastic garbage bags piled high against the wall. I turned on the overhead fluorescent lights. They flickered and hummed, casting a sickly yellow glow over the room. There were 6 large bins lined up against the wall and a mountain of loose bags. Which one? Which one was the shop rag bin? I tore into the first bag. Coffee grounds, eggshells. The smell of rotting food hit me and I gagged, but I didn't stop. I ripped the bag open, dumping the contents onto the concrete floor. I kicked through the trash with my house slippers, desperate for the sight of a blue, oily rag. Nothing. I moved to the next bag. Papers, junk mail. Old magazines. I threw them aside, papers flying everywhere like confetti. Time was ticking. I could hear the phantom sound of the garbage truck's air brakes in my mind. If that truck came and took this bag, the evidence would be gone forever. Courtney would win. My wife's murder would be buried in a landfill. I grabbed a heavy black bag from the corner. It was heavy, dense. I ripped it open. It was full of garden clippings, dead leaves. Thorns tore at my hands as I dug through it, but I didn't feel the pain. "Where is it?" I screamed at the empty garage. "Where did you put it, Claudette?" I looked at the bins again. There was one in the far corner covered in dust. It was the one I used when I worked on the truck. The one for oil and grease. I ran to it. I ripped the lid off. It was full to the brim. Old filters, greasy paper towels, and rags. Blue shop rags stained black with oil. I dumped the entire bin onto the floor. I fell to my knees in the mess. I started grabbing the rags, shaking them out one by one. Empty, empty, empty. My breath was coming in sobbing gasps. Please, please don't let it be gone. I reached for a ball of rags at the bottom of the pile. It was wrapped tight, bound with a piece of electrical tape. It felt heavy, solid. I picked it up. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely peel the tape back. I unwrapped the oily blue cloth. And there it was. A small, clear glass vial. The label had been mostly scraped off, just like she said, but there was a barcode and a partial chemical name printed in tiny black letters. I clutched the vial to my chest and let out a roar of relief and fury that shook the tools on the walls. I had it. I had the weapon. I stood up, my knees cracking. I didn't care about the mess. I didn't care about the smell. I walked back into the house, clutching that vial like it was a holy relic. I went back to my study. I grabbed a magnifying glass from my drawer. I sat down under the lamp and held the vial up to the light. The letters were small and smudged, but I could make them out. EPINEPHR. I typed the letters into my computer search bar. Epinephrine. I hit enter. The results filled the screen. Epinephrine, adrenaline, used for severe allergic reactions. I scrolled down. Contraindications. Do not use in patients with severe hypertension or heart disease. May cause rapid heartbeat cardiac arrest and stroke. Claudette had high blood pressure. Her heart was weak. We monitored it every day. Courtney knew that. Courtney was a nurse before she married Tyrell. She knew exactly what a concentrated dose of adrenaline would do to a woman with a weak heart. It would overstimulate it. It would cause a massive spike in blood pressure. It would burst the vessels in her brain. It would look exactly like a stroke. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't negligence. It was an execution. She had injected my wife with pure adrenaline and walked away, leaving her to die in terror while her heart exploded. I stared at the screen. The white light burned my eyes. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. My hand brushed past the old checkbooks and the passports. I felt the cold, heavy metal of my service pistol. A Colt 1911. I hadn't fired it in 20 years, but I kept it clean. I kept it oiled. I took it out. The weight of it was familiar, comforting. I could go over there right now. I could drive to their fancy house in the suburbs. I could kick down the door. I could put this gun to Courtney's head and ask her why. I could ask Tyrell how he could let this happen. I could end it all tonight. My thumb brushed the safety. Click. I stood up. I started walking toward the door, the gun heavy in my hand. The rage was a red haze in my vision. I wanted to see fear in their eyes. I wanted to see them beg. But then I stopped. I looked at the picture of Claudette on the mantel. She was smiling that soft, patient smile she gave me when I was being stubborn. "Do not trust the boys," her note had said. "They are watching. If I went over there and shot them, I would go to prison. The truth would die with me. They would be victims. Tragic victims of a crazy old man who lost his mind after his wife died. They would win. They would get the sympathy. They would get the narrative. And they would get the money. Courtney would want that. She would want me to react with violence. It would prove I was dangerous. It would prove I belonged in a cage." I looked at the gun. Then I looked at the vial on my desk. This vial was more powerful than the gun. This vial was the key to a prison cell, not for me, but for them. I engaged the safety. I put the gun back in the drawer. I sat back down. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart to slow its frantic rhythm. I didn't need a bullet. I needed a plan. They thought I was a senile old man. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. Good. I would give them exactly what they wanted. I would play the part. I would be the stumbling, forgetful, broken old fool they believed me to be. I would lure them in. I would make them feel safe. I would make them feel powerful. And when they were close enough, when they were drunk on their own greed and arrogance, I would close the trap. I picked up the phone. It was 4 a.m. I dialed Tyrell's number. It rang 4 times before he answered, his voice groggy and irritated. "Hello? Dad? It is 4 a.m. What is wrong?" I made my voice tremble. I let a little bit of the panic I felt seep into my tone, but I twisted it. I made it sound like confusion. "Tyrell," I whispered. "Tyrell, I think I am lost." "What do you mean lost? You are at home, aren't you?" "I don't know," I said. "I am in the study, but I don't remember how I got here. And Tyrell, I don't know where your mother is. She was just here. She was just here making tea." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then I heard a rustling sound. Tyrell was sitting up. "Dad, Mom passed away, remember?" I let out a sob. A fake broken sound. No, that isn't right. She was just here." "Tyrell, I am scared. My head feels foggy. I think you were right. I shouldn't be alone." I heard him cover the phone. I heard him whisper to Courtney, "He is having an episode. He thinks Mom is alive." I heard Courtney's voice in the background, sharp and awake. "This is it. This is what we needed. Go over there." Tyrell came back on the line, his voice fake soothing, dripping with condescension. "Stay there, Dad. Don't move. We are coming over. We are going to take care of you." "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, son. Please hurry." I hung up the phone. I wiped the tears from my face. My eyes were dry now, cold. I hid the vial in the pocket of my robe. I hid the USB drive in the hollow leg of my desk chair. Then I went to the kitchen. I poured a cup of coffee and deliberately spilled half of it on the floor. I knocked over a chair. I messed up my hair. I sat down at the table and waited for my son and his murderer wife to come and save me. The play was about to begin. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the cold puddle of coffee I had intentionally spilled on the linoleum floor. It had been 40 minutes since I called Tyrell, and the caffeine stain was starting to dry into a sticky brown map of my feigned incompetence. I had unbuttoned the top of my shirt and messed up my hair just enough to look neglected, but not enough to look like I was trying. I needed to thread a needle here. I had to look weak enough to be exploited, but sane enough to sign a legal document. The front door opened without a knock. Tyrell walked in, the keys jingling in his hand. He didn't call out hello. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just walked in like he already owned the place. He stopped in the doorway of the kitchen and looked at me. I let my jaw go slack. I stared at a spot on the wall just over his left shoulder, letting my eyes lose their focus. "Dad," Tyrell said, his voice loud and impatient. "Dad, are you listening to me?" I blinked slowly and turned my head toward him. The movement was stiff, a performance I had practiced in the mirror for an hour. I looked at his face, and then I smiled, a vacant, watery smile. "Kendrick," I rasped. "You came. Where is your brother? Did he bring the truck?" Tyrell's face twisted in annoyance. He hated being mistaken for his younger brother. Kendrick was the screw-up, the gambler, the failure. Tyrell thought he was the king. "It is Tyrell, Dad," he said, stepping over the spilled coffee without making a move to clean it up. "Kendrick isn't here. You called me, remember? You said you were lost." I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. It wasn't entirely an act. The rage I felt burning in my gut was making my nerves jump, but I channeled it into the tremor of a man losing his grip on reality. "I don't remember calling anyone," I whispered. "I was just waiting for Claudette. She went to the store. She has been gone a long time, Tyrell. I am worried about the traffic." Tyrell let out a heavy sigh. He pulled out his phone. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He typed furiously, his thumbs flying over the screen. I knew exactly who he was texting, and I knew exactly what he was saying. "He is gone. The old man is completely cooked. Get over here." He put the phone away and put a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy and condescending. "Mom isn't coming back." "Dad," he said, his voice taking on that fake, soothing tone people use with toddlers and pets. "But it is okay. We are going to take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." I looked up at him, tears welling in my eyes. Tears of frustration that I had raised a son who could look his grieving father in the face and plot his destruction. "I am just so tired, son," I said. "The bills, the house, the noise. It is too much. I just want to rest." "That is exactly what we are going to do," Tyrell said, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. "We are going to let you rest. Courtney is on her way. She is bringing a friend who can help us sort all this out." I nodded, letting my head drop back down. "Good," I mumbled. "Good. I just want it to stop." Tyrell stepped away from me. He went to the window and looked out, waiting. I saw him check his reflection in the glass, adjusting his tie. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. He had no idea that the winning ticket was actually a subpoena waiting to happen. 20 minutes later, the front door opened again. The click of high heels on the hardwood floor announced Courtney. She didn't come alone. Following her was a short, sweating man in a cheap suit carrying a leather briefcase that looked more expensive than his car. Jeremiah Courtney cooed, sweeping into the kitchen. "Oh, look at you. You look terrible." "Tyrell, why didn't you clean up this coffee?" She didn't wait for an answer. She grabbed a paper towel and threw it over the spill, nudging it with the toe of her expensive boot. She looked at me with eyes that were cold and calculating, assessing my state, like a butcher assesses a side of beef. "Dad." "This is Mr. Stone," Tyrell said, gesturing to the sweating man. "He is a lawyer, a specialist." Mr. Stone stepped forward, extending a damp hand. "A pleasure, Mr. Blackwood. Your son and daughter-in-law have told me so much about you. They are very concerned for your well-being." I shook his hand weakly, letting my grip be limp. "He is here to help us," Courtney said, pulling out a chair and sitting next to me. She smelled of vanilla perfume and ambition. "Jeremiah, we hate seeing you like this. We hate seeing confused, alone, in this big empty house. It is dangerous. Remember what happened with the stove last week? I hadn't done anything with the stove last week. It was a fabrication, a lie she was planting to build the narrative of my incompetence. I don't remember, I whispered. Exactly, she said, patting my hand. Her skin was cool and dry. That is why Mr. Stone is here. He has prepared some papers. Very simple papers. They just say that Tyrell and I will handle the boring stuff for you. The bills, the taxes, the maintenance. You won't have to lift a finger. You can just rest. Mr. Stone opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. They were stapled together in a blue legal folder. He placed them on the table in front of me. This is a standard, durable power of attorney, Mr. Blackwood Stone, said, his voice oily. It grants your son full authority to manage your assets, your real estate, and your medical decisions. It effectively transfers the burden of your estate to him so you can focus on your health. I looked at the papers. The text was dense, but I could read the headers. Total asset transfer, medical proxy, revocation of prior wills. It was a death warrant for my freedom. If I signed this, they could sell my house, empty my bank accounts, and shove me into a state-run facility before the ink was dry. And I wouldn't be able to do a thing about it. Where do I sign? I asked, my voice trembling. Right here, Dad Tyrell said eagerly, pointing to a line at the bottom of the page. He pulled a gold pen from his pocket. It was my pen. A pen I had been missing for weeks. He must have stolen it the last time he was here. Courtney leaned in close. Her eyes were hungry. Just sign it, Jeremiah. And then we can get you something to eat. Maybe some soup. You look like you haven't eaten in days. Soup. The same soup she had poisoned with sedatives just 2 days ago. I knew about that because I had watched the footage from the hidden camera in the kitchen. I had seen her sprinkle the powder in. I had poured it down the sink when she wasn't looking. I took the pen. My hand shook violently. I brought the tip down to the paper. The three of them leaned in Stone, Tyrell, and Courtney. They were like vultures circling a dying animal waiting for the final breath. I let the pen hover over the signature line. I took a breath. I let my hand spasm. The pen jerked. It flew out of my hand and skidded across the table. But before it did, my arm flailed out and hit the mug of cold coffee that was sitting next to the papers. The mug tipped over. Brown liquid flooded across the table. It soaked into the documents, instantly turning the white paper into a soggy brown mess. The ink started to run. The signature line dissolved. "Oh no," I cried, jumping up and knocking my chair backward. "Oh no, I am so clumsy. Look what I did. I ruined it." Courtney let out a shriek. She grabbed the papers, trying to shake the coffee off, but it was too late. They were a dripping pulp. "You stupid old man," she hissed, her mask slipping for a second. "Look what you did. Those were originals." Tyrell grabbed napkins, trying to blot the mess, but he just smeared it worse. "Dad, be careful. God, why are you so useless?" Mr. Stone looked annoyed. He sighed and wiped a splash of coffee from his cheap suit. "It is all right," he said, though his jaw was tight. "I have copies back at the office. We can print them out again. But we will need to do this another time. I have a court appearance in an hour." I stood there wringing my hands, looking from one to the other. "I am sorry," I wailed. "I just wanted to sign. I just wanted to help." "It is fine," Courtney snapped. "We will come back tomorrow." "No," I said suddenly. My voice was a little stronger. "No, not tomorrow." They all looked at me. "I want to do this right," I said. I looked at Courtney. "You said I should rest. You said I should retire." I think we should celebrate." "Celebrate?" Tyrell asked, confused. "Yes," I said. "If I am giving you everything, if I am stepping down, I want to do it with dignity. I want to say goodbye to my old life properly." I looked at Courtney. "Invite your parents," I said. "Invite your mother and father. They always said I was stubborn. I want them to see this. I want them to see me doing the right thing for the family. And bring the real estate partners you mentioned, the ones who want to buy the building. Let's sign everything over at once. The house, the office building, the accounts, all of it." Courtney's eyes lit up. The greed washed away her anger. She saw an audience. She saw a victory lap. She loved to show off for her parents, to prove she had married into money, even if she had to steal it first. That is actually a lovely idea, Jeremiah," she said, her voice turning sweet again. "A signing ceremony, a passing of the torch." "Yes," I said. "Saturday, at the office." "Henderson said the painting is done. It will be clean. We can have champagne. We can toast to my retirement." "Saturday," Tyrell said. That is 3 days away, Dad. We should do this sooner. No, I said firmly. I need time to say goodbye to the house. I need time to pack my things. Saturday. Or I don't sign. I saw them exchange looks. Tyrell was worried, but Courtney was already planning the outfit she would wear. She was imagining the look on her parents' faces when they saw her taking control of a multi-million-dollar estate. Okay, she said. Saturday. But Jeremiah, do not break anything else. And do not leave this house. We will bring you groceries. You just sit here and wait. I nodded. I will wait, I said. I will be right here. They left 10 minutes later. Mr. Stone took his soggy briefcase. Tyrell took the ruined papers. Courtney took the last of my dignity, or so she thought. I watched them drive away from the living room window. As soon as their tail lights disappeared around the corner, I straightened my back. The shaking stopped. The confusion vanished. I walked to the kitchen and cleaned up the coffee with efficient, steady movements. Then I went to my study. I pulled out my burner phone, the one they didn't know about. I dialed a number. Mr. Vance, I said when the voice answered. It is Jeremiah. The trap is set. They are coming Saturday. And they are bringing everyone, good Attorney Vance said. His voice was deep and sharp like a guillotine blade. I have the papers ready on my end. And Jeremiah, the forensic accountant, just finished with the insulin vial. It is a match. We have them cold. I hung up. Saturday. 3 days to wait. 3 days to play the fool. But on Saturday, the fool would become the judge, jury, and executioner, and the sentence would be absolute. The neon sign of the Lucky Ace flickered and buzzed against the rainy night sky, casting a sickly red glow on the wet pavement. It was a place that smelled of stale beer and desperation, the kind of hole in the wall where men went to lose the last of their dignity. I sat in my truck across the street watching the door. I was not Jeremiah the grieving widower tonight. I was Big Jerry, the man who used to run crews of roughnecks on construction sites, the man who knew how to wait in the dark. I had been following Kendrick for 3 hours, my second son, the one who always had a scheme, the one who always needed just a few $100s to get back on his feet. He had parked his car around the block trying to be discreet, but he walked with the hurried, hunched posture of a man who owes money to people who don't send invoices. I watched him go inside. I gave him 10 minutes. Then I pulled my collar up against the rain and followed him. The inside of the bar was dark, thick with smoke, and the low murmur of men making bad decisions. I stayed in the back near the door, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. I spotted Kendrick at a table in the far corner. He wasn't gambling. He was sitting across from 2 men who looked like they were carved out of granite. One of them, a man with a scar running down his cheek, was holding Kendrick's hand. But it wasn't a friendly gesture. He had Kendrick's hand pinned to the table, palm up, splayed out like a frog in a biology class. I moved closer, keeping to the shadows. I needed to hear this. Please, Marcus Kendrick was pleading, his voice high and thin with terror. Please, I just need a few more days. The deal is happening Saturday. My father is signing everything over. I will have the cash on Monday. I swear on my mother's grave. The man named Marcus didn't smile. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pair of rusty bolt cutters. He laid them on the table with a heavy metallic clank. You swore on your mother's grave last week, Kendrick Marcus said, his voice low and bored. Interest is due, and you are short. $200,000 is a lot of money to lose on horses. You don't have it, so we take collateral. A pinky finger seems fair for a missed payment. Kendrick started to sob. He tried to pull his hand back, but the other goon, the one standing behind him, clamped a hand onto his shoulder, keeping him pinned. No, please, Kendrick cried. Saturday, I promise. Saturday I will have $500,000. Just wait until Saturday. Marcus picked up the bolt cutters. He opened the jaws. They looked dull and cruel. I do not work on credit, Marcus said. Hold him still. He moved the cutters toward Kendrick's finger. Kendrick screamed a sound of pure animal panic. That was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked straight up to the table. I didn't run. I walked with the heavy, inevitable steps of a man who owns the ground he stands on. I slammed a thick brown envelope onto the table right between the bolt cutters and my son's trembling hand. The sound made Marcus jump. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. Who are you, old man? He growled. I am the bank, I said. My voice was steady, cold as ice. I pointed at the envelope. There is $20,000 in there. Cash, unmarked. That covers his interest for the month and the inconvenience fee for your time. Marcus looked at the envelope, then at me. He put down the cutters. He picked up the envelope and thumbed through the bills. He nodded slowly. This covers the interest, he agreed. But the principal is still due. Monday, I said. You will have your money on Monday. But if you touch him, if you take a piece of him before then, you get nothing. And I will bring the police down on this place so hard you will be digging latrines in state prison for the next 20 years. Do we understand each other? Marcus laughed a dry, rasping sound. He tucked the envelope into his jacket. We understand each other. Take him. He smells like fear anyway. It is ruining my drink. The goon let go of Kendrick. My son scrambled up from the chair, clutching his hand to his chest, tears streaming down his face. He looked at me with shock and relief, expecting a hug, expecting his father to save him and tell him it was okay. I didn't look at him. I turned and walked out the door. Get in the car, I said over my shoulder. Kendrick followed me out, stumbling in the rain. We got into my truck. I locked the doors. The sound of the locks engaging was loud in the small cab. Kendrick slumped in the passenger seat, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "Oh God, Dad," he panted. "Thank you. I don't know how you knew. I don't know what I would have done. I am sorry. I promise I will pay you back." I started the engine, but I didn't put it in gear. I turned on the dome light. The harsh yellow light illuminated his face, his red eyes, his weak chin. He looked like his mother, but he had none of her strength, none of her heart. "Stop talking," I said. The tone of my voice shut him up instantly. It wasn't the voice of a savior, it was the voice of a judge. "I didn't save you because I love you, Kendrick," I said, looking straight ahead through the rain-streaked windshield. "I saved you because you are useful to me." Kendrick blinked, confused. "What? What do you mean, Dad?" I turned to face him. I looked him dead in the eye. "That $20,000 wasn't a gift," I said. "It was a purchase. I just bought you. I own you now, and I want a return on my investment." Kendrick shrank back against the door. "You are scaring me, Dad." "Good," I said. "You should be scared. Because those men back there, they just wanted a finger. I want the truth. And if you don't give it to me, I will unlock this door and I will kick you out, and you can go back in there and explain to Marcus why his money just walked away." Kendrick started to shake. "What truth?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the empty vial of epinephrine, the one I had found in the garage. I held it up to the light. "Tell me about this," I said. Kendrick's eyes widened. He recognized it. I saw the recognition flash across his face before he could hide it. "I don't know what that is," he stammered, looking away. "It is medicine, right? Mom's medicine." "Don't lie to me," I roared, slamming my hand against the steering wheel. Kendrick jumped, covering his face with his arms. "I know." Courtney switched the insulin, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "I found the audio diary your mother left. I know she did it. But what I want to know is what you knew." Kendrick was crying now, ugly, sobbing gasps. "I didn't do it," he wailed. "I swear, Dad, I didn't touch her. It was all Courtney. But you knew I pressed. You knew what she was planning." Kendrick nodded slowly, his head hanging low. She told me she had a way to speed things up. She said Mom was suffering. She said it would be mercy." "Mercy," I spat. "Mercy. She promised you money, didn't she? That is what you told Marcus back there. You said you would have cash on Saturday. Where is that money coming from, Kendrick?" He didn't answer. He just cried. I grabbed his collar and pulled him toward me. The smell of fear coming off him was sickening. "How much?" I demanded. "How much was your mother's life worth to you?" $500,000, he whispered. I let him go, shoving him back against the seat. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. $500,000. My wife, his mother, the woman who nursed him through fevers, who paid for his first car, who forgave him every mistake he ever made. She was sold for $500,000. Courtney promised me. Kendrick sobbed the words spilling out of him now like vomit. She said if I kept quiet, if I didn't say anything about the medicine switch, she would give me $500,000 cash from the sale of the building. She said she would handle Tyrell. She said Tyrell was too weak to do what needed to be done, but she would take care of it. She said you were going to cut us off. She said Mom was going to change the will. We had to act, Dad. We were desperate. I sat there listening to my son confess to being an accomplice to murder. He sat there justifying it with his debts, with his fear. You watched her die, I said. You came to Sunday dinner 2 days after Courtney switched that medicine. You sat there eating her roast chicken and you watched her getting weaker and you said nothing. I was scared, Kendrick whined. Courtney said if I talked, she would pin it on me. She said she would tell everyone I stole the money for gambling. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I stopped the recording app. It had captured every word, every sob, every pathetic excuse. I looked at Kendrick. I felt nothing. The love I had for him, the hope I had held on to for 35 years was gone. It had evaporated in that car, leaving only cold ash. "You are going to do exactly what I say," I told him. He nodded, wiping his nose. "Anything, Dad. I will do anything. You are going to go to that meeting on Saturday," I said. "You are going to smile. You are going to act like everything is fine. You are going to let Courtney think she has won." And then what he asked. "And then you are going to get what you deserve," I said. I reached into the glove box. I pulled out a thick envelope. It contained another $5,000. I threw it in his lap. "Get out of my truck," I said. Kendrick looked at the money, then at me. "Dad, get out!" I screamed. He scrambled for the door handle, fumbling with the lock. He fell out onto the wet pavement, clutching the money to his chest. I slammed the door and locked it. I watched him stand up in the rain, looking at me through the glass like a kicked dog. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I didn't look back. I drove through the rain, the recording of his confession playing over and over in my mind. 500,000. Mercy. We had to act. I had the evidence now. I had the motive, I had the method, I had the confession, but I wasn't done. Courtney was the head of the snake. Tyrell was the body. Kendrick was just the tail. I needed to cut the head off, and to do that, I needed to let them think the victim was already dead. I needed to escalate the play. I drove home. The house was dark. I walked into the kitchen and stood there for a long time looking at the empty chair where Claudette used to sit. "I promise you," I whispered to the empty room, "they will not keep a dime. Not one dime." I took the vial of epinephrine out of my pocket. I placed it on the counter next to the recording device. Tomorrow I would see Tyrell. Tomorrow I would play the senile old man one last time. I would set the stage for Saturday. But tonight I had to grieve. Not for my wife. I had already grieved for her. Tonight I grieved for my sons, because as far as I was concerned, the 2 boys I raised died tonight in that truck. The men who walked the earth now were strangers. And strangers got no mercy from Jeremiah Blackwood. I sat in my study listening to the voices coming through the small speaker on my desk. It was Thursday afternoon. 2 days before the signing ceremony I had orchestrated. I had planted a listening device in the flower arrangement on my dining room table the last time they were here. The range was surprisingly good. I could hear Courtney pacing back and forth in her living room across town, calling Tyrell, who was apparently driving. Her voice was tight with paranoia. She said, "Tyrell, I do not like this. Your father agreed too easily. Since when does Jeremiah Blackwood just roll over? He built bridges, Tyrell. He does not just give up." I leaned back in my chair. She was smarter than her husband. She smelled a trap even if she could not see it. Tyrell's voice came over the speaker, tinny and distorted by the car connection. He said, "Babe, you saw him. He spilled coffee all over himself. He is losing it. He thinks Mom is still alive. We won. Stop worrying." "We have not won until the ink is dry," Courtney snapped. "And even then, what if he wakes up next week and calls a lawyer? What if he claims duress? We are exposed, Tyrell. We have debts. We have the mortgage. If this falls through, we are finished. We need to make sure he does not have the capacity to challenge anything." I felt a cold chill settle in my stomach. I knew what was coming. She continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the microphone barely picked up. "We need to help him, Tyrell. We need to help him get to the finish line faster. If he has a medical episode tonight, if he falls into a coma or just does not wake up, the power of attorney kicks in automatically. We do not even need the Saturday signing. We just take control." Tyrell hesitated. "You mean, like Mom?" "Yes, like Mom," she hissed. "But cleaner. Sedatives, high dose. It will look like he just went to sleep and his old heart gave out. No mess, no questions, just a grieving family inheriting their due." I stopped the recording. My hands were fists on the desk. They were not just greedy. They were actively hunting me. They were discussing my murder as if it were a renovation project. I looked at the clock. It was 5 p.m. Courtney would be here soon. She liked to play the dutiful daughter-in-law bringing dinner to the invalid. It was her cover. I stood up. I went to the kitchen. I checked the hidden camera I had installed in the smoke detector above the stove. The red light blinked once. It was recording. I sat down at the kitchen table. I hunched my shoulders. I practiced the vacant stare. I was not the hunter right now. I was the bait. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I shuffled to answer it. Courtney stood on the porch holding a plastic container. She was wearing a yellow sundress and a smile that could freeze water. "Hello, Dad," she chirped. "I brought you some soup. Chicken and dumpling, your favorite. Tyrell said you were not eating enough, so I thought I would make sure you got a hot meal." I opened the door wider, letting her in. "Thank you, Courtney," I mumbled. That is very kind. I am hungry." She walked past me into the kitchen. She set the container on the counter. She did not ask how I was. She did not look at me. She just started opening drawers looking for a pot. "Sit down, Jeremiah," she ordered. "I will heat it up for you. You just rest those weary bones." I sat at the table. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, keeping it below the edge of the table. I opened the app that connected to the smoke detector camera. I watched the screen. I saw the top of Courtney's head as she stood at the stove. She poured the soup into a pot. Then she reached into her bra. She pulled out a small white paper packet. She looked over her shoulder at me. I was staring at the wall, drooling slightly, giving her exactly what she wanted to see. She turned back to the stove. On the screen, I saw her tear the packet open. She dumped a fine white powder into the soup. She stirred it vigorously with a wooden spoon. She stirred it for a long time, making sure every grain was dissolved. She put the empty packet in her pocket. Then she turned around, the smile back in place. Almost ready, she sang out, "It smells delicious." I watched her bring the bowl to the table. Steam rose from it, carrying the scent of chicken sage and death. "Here we go," she said, placing it in front of me. "Eat it all up, Jeremiah. It will help you sleep." I looked at the soup. I looked at her. "Thank you, Courtney," I said, my voice cracking. You are a good girl. Tyrell is lucky." She patted my hand. "Eat," she said. I picked up the spoon. I took a spoonful. I brought it to my lips. I pretended to blow on it. Then I dropped the spoon. It clattered into the bowl, splashing broth onto the table. "Oh," I said. "My hands, they are so slippery. Courtney, could you get me a glass of water? My throat is dry." She sighed loud and impatient. "Sure, Jeremiah, just eat the soup." She turned to the sink to fill a glass. In that split second, I grabbed the bowl. I dumped the entire contents into the large fern plant sitting on the floor next to the table. I wiped the bowl with my sleeve to make it look used. I put the bowl back on the table. When she turned around, I was wiping my mouth. "That was fast," she said, eyeing the empty bowl. "I was hungry," I said. "It was good. Very good." She smiled. A real smile this time. A smile of victory. "Good," she said. "Now drink your water." I took the water. I drank it slowly. I waited 5 minutes. I let my eyelids droop. I let my head nod. "I am feeling very tired, Courtney," I slurred. "Very heavy." "That is the food coma," she said, watching me closely. "Why don't you lay down, Jeremiah? Just right here on the floor is fine if you can't make it to the bedroom." I stood up, swaying. I took 2 steps. Then I crumpled. I fell to the linoleum, hitting the floor hard. I made sure to land on my side, my arm cushioning the blow but making it look uncontrolled. I let out a long groan and then went silent. I lay there, eyes closed, regulating my breathing, forcing it to be shallow and rhythmic. Jeremiah, Courtney said sharply. "Dad." I did not move. She kicked my shoe. Nothing. She pulled out her phone. "He is down," she said. "Get in here." The front door opened seconds later. Tyrell had been waiting in the car. He came running in. "Is he dead?" he asked, his voice breathless. "I don't know," Courtney said. "Does it matter? He is out cold. That powder was strong enough to knock out a horse. If he wakes up, his brain will be mush. If he does not, we call the coroner in the morning. Either way, we are clear. Start searching," she ordered. I heard them moving through my house like locusts. I heard drawers being ripped open. I heard papers being shuffled. I heard the crash of a vase breaking. "Check the study," Courtney yelled from the bedroom. "Look for the deed. Look for the bank books. He has to have a ledger somewhere. Old men always have ledgers." I lay on the cold floor, listening to my son desecrate my home. I heard Tyrell in the living room knocking books off the shelves. I found his watch. Tyrell called out. "The gold one." "Take it," Courtney said. "Pawn it. We need cash for the lawyer." I felt a tear slip out from under my eyelid. It rolled down my cheek into the dust of the floor. That watch was a retirement gift from my crew. Tyrell knew that. He knew how much it meant to me. I heard them come back into the kitchen. I felt Tyrell's shadow fall over me. He looked so small, he whispered, He looks like a problem solved, Courtney said. Did you find the cash? No, Tyrell said. Just the watch and some silver coins. Fine. It will do for now. Once we get the signature or the death certificate, we get access to the accounts. What are we going to do with him? Tyrell asked. If he wakes up. Courtney laughed. If he wakes up, he won't know his own name. I called that place on 5th Street, the Shady Acres. It is state-funded. They have a bed open in the dementia ward. It is cheap, Tyrell. It smells like urine and boiled cabbage, but it is free. We dump him there. We tell them he is aggressive and confused. We sign the admission papers as his guardians, and we leave him. Shady Acres. I knew the place. It was a warehouse for the forgotten, a place where people went to die alone in soiled sheets. That is where they wanted to put me, not in a care home, in a dumping ground. Sounds good, Tyrell said. He won't last a month in there. No, Courtney agreed. He won't. And then the house is ours. The building is ours. Everything is ours. Let's go, she said. Leave him here. Let him marinate in that drug. We will come back in the morning with the papers. If he is breathing, we guide his hand. If he is not, we call the funeral home. Simple. I heard their footsteps retreating. I heard the front door open and close. I heard the lock click. I lay there for a long time until the sound of their car engine faded into the distance. Then I opened my eyes. I stood up. My joints ached from the hard floor, but my mind was crystal clear. I walked to the fern plant. The soil was soaking up the poisoned soup. I would have to throw the plant out. It was a shame. Claudette loved that fern. I went to the smoke detector. I pulled the memory card. I had the video. I had the proof of attempted murder. I went to my study. I checked the safe. It was open empty. They had taken the decoy papers I left there. They had taken the watch. Good. Let them feel victorious. Let them feel rich for one more day. I picked up the phone. I called Mr. Vance. They took the bait, I said. They tried to drug me. They robbed the house. And they are planning to dump me in Shady Acres. Vance was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. We have enough, Jeremiah. We have enough to put them away for life. Do you want to call the police now? No, I said. Not yet. I want them to sign. I want them to stand in that office in front of everyone and sign their names to the theft. I want them to think they have won right up until the moment the handcuffs click. Saturday, I said. We finish this on Saturday. I hung up. I went to the window and looked out at the street. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the lawn. I was alone in my house. My wife was dead. My sons were monsters. But I was still standing. And I was Big Jerry Blackwood. And I was about to bring the whole sky down on their heads. Saturday arrived with a bright, cruel sunshine that felt like a spotlight on a crime scene. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, adjusting the tie Claudette had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I had chosen my old gray suit, the one I wore to church, the one that had grown a little too loose around the shoulders since she passed. It smelled of lavender sachets and old memories. I didn't brush the lint off the lapel. I didn't polish my shoes. I needed to look like a man who had given up. I needed to look like the relic they believed I was. I grabbed a cane from the umbrella stand by the door. I didn't need a cane. My knees were strong, my back was straight, but today I needed a prop. I needed something to lean on to show them how frail I had become. I drove my truck to the downtown district. I drove slowly, letting the traffic pass me, letting people honk. I was practicing patience. I was practicing the slow-burning fuse of my anger. When I pulled up to the office building, I barely recognized it. Henderson had finished the work, but Courtney had transformed it. There were balloons tied to the railing, gold and white balloons bobbing in the wind like mocking heads. A banner was draped over the entrance that read, "Future Home of Vance Real Estate Holdings." She had already renamed the company. She hadn't even waited for the ink to dry. I parked and got out, leaning heavily on the cane. I shuffled toward the door. I could hear music coming from inside. Jazz. Soft, sophisticated jazz. The kind of music people played when they wanted to feel rich. I pushed open the door and stepped into what used to be my wife's sanctuary. The transformation was sickening. The walls were painted a stark clinical white, covering up the warm cream color Claudette had loved. The old, comfortable furniture was gone, replaced by rented high-top tables and sleek modern chairs. In the center of the room where the secret wall used to be, there was now a long mahogany conference table set with crystal glasses and bottles of expensive champagne. The room was full of people. Courtney was in the center of it all, wearing a white pantsuit that looked sharp enough to cut glass. She held a flute of champagne, laughing loudly at something a man in a pinstripe suit said. Tyrell stood next to her, holding a glass but not drinking. He looked pale, sweating in the air-conditioned room. Kendrick was in the corner near the food table, shoving shrimp cocktail into his mouth, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. And then I saw them. The guests of honor. Courtney's parents. The Hamiltons. I had not seen them since the funeral, where they had spent the entire time complaining about the humidity and checking their watches. They were standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline with an air of ownership that made my blood boil. Mr. Hamilton was a tall man with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been pinched together. Mrs. Hamilton was a carbon copy of Courtney, but with more jewelry and less patience. They had never liked me. They had never liked Tyrell either, but they tolerated him because he was malleable. They tolerated us because they thought we were quaint. I tapped my cane on the floor. It wasn't a loud sound, but it cut through the jazz and the chatter. The room went quiet. Heads turned. Jeremiah Courtney called out, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "You made it." We were starting to worry. She walked over to me, the click of her heels echoing on the hardwood. She didn't hug me. She stopped a foot away, looking me up and down with a critical eye. "Oh, Jeremiah," she said, sighing. "Is that the best suit you have? We have important people here today." I looked down at my shoes. "I am sorry, Courtney," I mumbled, my voice trembling. I just grabbed what was clean. I am a little confused today." She patted my arm patronizingly. "It is okay. Just go sit at the head of the table. Try not to spill anything." She guided me toward the table like I was a toddler. As we walked past the Hamiltons, Mrs. Hamilton wrinkled her nose. "Hello, Jerry," she said, using the nickname I hated. "You look tired." "I am tired, Beatrice," I said, sinking into the leather chair at the head of the table. "Very tired." "Well, it is almost over," Mr. Hamilton said, taking a sip of his champagne. "You are doing the right thing, Jerry. Finally. It takes a big man to admit when he is out of his depth, out of my depth. I had designed foundations for skyscrapers that withstood earthquakes. I had managed logistics for cargo fleets that crossed oceans. But to them, I was just a black man who had gotten lucky and was now reverting to his natural state of incompetence. "I think it is for the best," Mrs. Hamilton added. "Tyrell and Courtney have such vision. They can really turn this into something. It would be a shame to let these assets rot away in the hands of the past. The past. That is what I was to them. History. Something to be paved over." I looked at Tyrell. He was staring at me. I saw the guilt in his eyes, but it was weak. It was drowning in the promise of the money. He looked at the Hamiltons, at their approval, and I saw him straighten his spine. He wanted to be them more than he wanted to be my son. And Kendrick. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and gave me a small, terrified nod. He remembered the truck. He remembered the bolt cutters. He knew what was coming, but he was too scared to run. Just then, the door opened again and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. 3 men walked in. They were not family. They were not friends. They were sharks in Italian suits. "Ah, here they are," Courtney announced, clapping her hands. "Everyone, this is Mr. Sterling and his associates from the development group. They are the ones who are going to take this building to the next level." Mr. Sterling was a man with a tan that was too dark and teeth that were too white. He walked with the swagger of a man who buys and sells people for a living. He walked straight to Courtney, ignoring me completely. "Courtney, darling," he said, kissing her on both cheeks. "You have done a marvelous job with the staging. I can already see the potential. We tear down these internal walls, put in glass partitions, open up the floor plan. It is going to be a gold mine. Tear down the walls." They were talking about destroying my wife's legacy while I was sitting right there. "And this must be the father," Sterling said, finally turning to look at me. He looked at me like I was a piece of old furniture that came with the house. "Yes, this is Jeremiah," Courtney said. "He is ready to sign. He just wants to rest, Mr. Sterling. He knows he can't handle this anymore." Sterling nodded, pulling a gold pen from his pocket. "Smart man. Knowing when to fold is a skill." He signaled to one of his associates, a younger man who was carrying a thick leather portfolio. The associate rushed forward and laid the documents on the table in front of me. It was a mountain of paper. Deeds, transfer of ownership, durable power of attorney, revocation of trust. Courtney stepped up to my right side. Mr. Stone, the sweaty lawyer from the other day, appeared at my left. "Here we go," Jeremiah Courtney whispered. "Just like we practiced. You sign here, here, and here, and then it is all over. You can go back to the house. We will hire a nurse. You will be taken care of." I looked at the papers. The letters swam before my eyes, not because I couldn't read them, but because I was letting my eyes water, letting the tears of a helpless old man well up. I don't have my reading glasses," I stammered. "You don't need them," Stone said quickly. "I have reviewed everything, Mr. Blackwood. It is exactly as we discussed. Total transfer to Tyrell and Courtney. They become your guardians. They control the estate. It is standard." Standard. Theft was standard now. I picked up the pen Sterling had placed on the table. My hand shook violently. I let the tip of the pen hover over the signature line. I let it scratch the paper, making a jagged mark that looked nothing like a name. Everyone in the room held their breath. I could feel their eyes on me. The Hamiltons looking smug, Sterling looking impatient, Tyrell looking sick, Courtney looking hungry. "Just sign it, Jerry," Mr. Hamilton called out from the window. "Don't drag this out. It is embarrassing." Embarrassing. I gripped the pen harder. I looked at the paper. I, Jeremiah Blackwood, being of sound mind. The lie was right there in the first sentence. They were banking on me not being of sound mind, but the document claimed I was. It was a paradox of fraud. I lifted the pen. I looked at Courtney. "Are you sure this is what Claudette would have wanted?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Courtney sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Jeremiah, we have been over this. Claudette wanted you to be safe. She wanted us to thrive. She would be happy. She is looking down on us right now, and she is smiling. She is smiling." The image of Claudette smiling at the woman who injected her with poison made my stomach turn. It was the final straw. It was the spark that lit the powder keg I had been building for 3 days. I looked at Tyrell. "Son," I said, "are you sure?" Tyrell looked at his wife. He looked at her parents. He looked at the developers. He saw the life he wanted, the approval he craved. "Yes, Dad," he said, his voice flat. "I am sure. Just sign it." I looked at Kendrick. Kendrick looked at the floor. He didn't say a word. He was waiting for the explosion. I looked at the Hamiltons. "You are right, Beatrice," I said, my voice suddenly steady, my voice suddenly deep. "It is time to do the right thing." I dropped the pen. It hit the table with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Courtney frowned. "Jeremiah, pick up the pen." "No," I said. I sat back in the chair. I crossed my arms over my chest. I stopped shaking. I lifted my chin. I looked at Sterling. I looked at Stone. I looked at the Hamiltons. And then I looked at Courtney. I realized something I said, my voice booming now, filling the room, bouncing off the white walls. I realized I don't need a pen. Courtney laughed a nervous titter. "What are you talking about? Of course you need a pen. You need to sign." I reached into the pocket of my old gray suit, but I didn't pull out a pen. And I didn't pull out my reading glasses. I pulled out a small black remote control. It was the remote for the high-definition projector that Henderson had installed in the ceiling, the one Courtney planned to use to show off her real estate renderings to the developers. "I don't need a pen," I repeated, "because I am not signing anything." Courtney's face went slack. "What is that?" I pointed the remote at the far wall where a large white screen had been pulled down. "I think we should watch a movie instead," I said. "Jeremiah, stop this!" Courtney hissed, reaching for the remote. "You are having an episode!" "Tyrell, grab him." Tyrell moved toward me. "Sit down, Tyrell," I barked. It was the voice of Big Jerry, the voice that commanded construction sites, the voice that took no nonsense. Tyrell froze. He had not heard that voice in 20 years. I pressed the button on the remote. The projector hummed to life. A beam of bright light cut through the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The screen flickered, blue, then black, and then an image appeared. It was grainy at first, high angle, black and white. It was the view from a smoke detector. It showed a kitchen, my kitchen. The timestamp in the corner read Thursday, 5:12 p.m. The room went deadly silent. On the screen, a woman walked into the frame. She was wearing a yellow sundress. It was Courtney. She stood at the stove stirring a pot. She looked over her shoulder, right at the camera, right at me, right at everyone in the room. Then she reached into her bra. She pulled out a white packet. She tore it open. She dumped the powder into the soup. Gasps filled the room. Mrs. Hamilton put a hand to her mouth. Sterling took a step back. On the screen, Courtney stirred the poison into the soup. She smiled. A cold, satisfied smile. I paused the video. The image of Courtney pouring the powder froze on the screen, looming over us 10 feet tall. Courtney stood there in the office, her face draining of all blood until she looked like a wax statue. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. "That is not what it looks like," she whispered finally. That was salt. Extra salt. Salt, I said, standing up. I didn't need the cane anymore. I kicked it aside. It clattered across the floor. "Since when do you keep salt in your bra, Courtney?" I looked at the Hamiltons. "Is that how you raised her, Beatrice? To poison old men in their own kitchens?" Beatrice looked at her daughter. "Courtney, what is this? What did you do?" I pressed the button again. The video disappeared. Now the speakers crackled. Audio. A voice filled the room. A young man's voice. Terrified. Weeping. "She promised me $500,000, Dad. She said if I kept quiet about the insulin switch, she would give me cash from the sale of the building. She said she would handle Tyrell." Kendrick let out a whimper and slid down the wall to the floor, covering his head with his arms. Tyrell looked at his brother. Then he looked at his wife. The realization was hitting him like a physical blow. "Insulin switch. You," he whispered, looking at Courtney. "You said Mom died of a stroke. You said it was natural." Courtney backed away, shaking her head. No, that is a lie. That recording is fake. He is manipulating it. He is senile." I pressed the button one last time. This time it was my wife's voice. It was the recording from the secret room, the one from the safe. "Jeremiah, if you are hearing this, I am gone. Courtney was here today. She brought me a new batch of insulin." The voice of the dead woman filled the renovated office, bouncing off the fresh paint, echoing in the ears of the people who had come to celebrate her erasure. Courtney screamed, a high, piercing sound of pure animal terror. She lunged toward the projector table, trying to find the plug, trying to stop the voice of her victim. But she didn't make it. The door to the office burst open. And this time, it wasn't investors. It wasn't family. It was the police. Mr. Stone slid the heavy document across the polished mahogany table toward me. The paper made a dry, rasping sound like a snake moving through dead leaves. It sat there waiting a death warrant for my legacy and a pardon for my wife's murderers. "Sign right here on the dotted line," Mr. Blackwood Stone said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He held out a heavy gold fountain pen. It was expensive, the kind of pen men use when they want to feel important. I reached out and took the pen. My hand was trembling violently. I let it shake. I let the nib hover over the paper ink, bleeding out into a small black puddle on the page. I could feel the energy in the room tighten. Courtney leaned forward, her eyes wide and hungry. Tyrell held his breath. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton were smiling that tight, superior smile they reserved for moments when they felt their worldview was being confirmed. Even the developer, Mr. Sterling, checked his watch, impatient for the plunder. "Just sign it, Jerry," Mr. Hamilton said from the window. "Put yourself out of your misery." I looked at the pen in my hand. It felt heavy, cold, and hateful. I looked at the paper. Total transfer of assets. I looked up at Courtney. Her eyes were locked on the pen. She was already spending the money in her head. She was already redecorating my house. She was already erasing me. I stopped shaking. The tremor in my hand vanished instantly. I gripped the pen tight, not with the frailty of an old man, but with the strength of a steelworker. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I am not signing this," I said. My voice was low, steady, and clear. Courtney's smile faltered. "What?" "Jeremiah, sit down. You are confused." "I am not confused," I roared. I pulled my arm back and threw the pen. It flew across the room and smashed against the far wall, splattering ink across the fresh white paint Henderson had just applied. The sound was like a gunshot. Mr. Stone flinched. Tyrell jumped. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Courtney gasped, thinking perhaps I was reaching for a weapon. In a way, I was. I pulled out the small black remote control for the projector. "I told you," I said, my voice filling the stunned silence. "We are going to watch a movie." Courtney lunged forward, reaching for my hand. "Give me that." I held the remote up high out of her reach. I pressed the power button. Above us, the high-definition projector hummed to life. A beam of blue light cut through the air, hitting the large, retractable screen on the far wall. "Jeremiah, stop this," Mr. Hamilton shouted, stepping forward. "You are making a scene." "Sit down," I ordered him, pointing a finger at his chest. The screen flickered. The blue turned to black and white. It was footage from a security camera. High angle. Grainy but sharp enough. It showed a kitchen. My kitchen. The date stamp in the corner read Thursday, 5:12 p.m. A woman walked into the frame. She was wearing a bright yellow sundress. Everyone in the room recognized her instantly. It was Courtney. She stood at the stove stirring a pot of soup. She paused and looked over her shoulder. She looked right at the camera, right at me, right at the audience in this room. The look on her face was one of pure calculated malice. Then she reached into the bodice of her dress. She pulled out a small white paper packet. She tore it open and dumped a fine white powder into the broth. She stirred it in vigorously, her movements sharp and angry. Gasps rippled through the room. Mrs. Hamilton covered her mouth with her hand. Mr. Sterling took a step back, his face darkening. On the screen, Courtney smiled. It was a cold, satisfied smile, a killer's smile. I pressed the pause button. The image froze. Courtney, 10 feet tall, looming over us, pouring poison into my dinner. "That is not what it looks like," Courtney screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "That was salt. It was just salt. Jeremiah needed more sodium." "Salt?" I asked, my voice cutting through her panic. "Since when do you keep salt in your bra?" "Courtney." I looked at the Hamiltons. "Is that how you raised her, Beatrice? To poison old men in their own kitchens? To drug grandfathers so you can steal their homes?" Beatrice looked at her daughter, horror dawning on her face. "Courtney, what is that? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Courtney yelled, backing away. "He is manipulating the video. It is a deep fake. He is crazy." I pressed the next button on the remote. The screen went black, but the speakers mounted in the ceiling crackled to life. Audio. Crystal clear, high-fidelity audio. A young man's voice filled the room. It was sobbing, broken, terrified. "She promised me $500,000, Dad. She said if I kept quiet, if I didn't say anything about the insulin switch, she would give me cash from the sale of the building. She said she would handle Tyrell." Kendrick, who had been cowering in the corner, let out a low moan and slid down the wall to the floor, burying his face in his knees. The voice continued. "She said Mom was suffering. She said it would be mercy. But she just wanted the money, Dad. We had to act." Tyrell turned slowly to look at his brother. His face was the color of ash. "Insulin switch," he whispered. He looked at Courtney. "You told me Mom died of a stroke. You told me it was natural. You told me you checked on her." Courtney was shaking her head violently, her hands over her ears. No, that is not true. Kendrick is a liar. He is a gambler. He says anything for money." I pressed the button one last time. The audio changed. There was the sound of static, a hiss of tape, and then a voice that made everyone in the room freeze. It was a woman's voice. Gentle, tired, scared. It was Claudette. "Jeremiah, if you are hearing this, I am gone. And if I am gone, you need to know why." Tyrell made a sound like a wounded animal. He fell into a chair, staring at the speakers as if he could see his mother's ghost floating in the air. "Courtney was here today. She brought me a new batch of insulin. She said the pharmacy changed suppliers. But after I took it, I felt dizzy. My heart started racing. I felt like I was dying. The silence in the office was absolute. The only sound was my wife's voice testifying from the grave. I kept the empty bottle, Jeremiah. I hid it in the garage inside the old paint can. Please find it. I think she is trying to kill me." The recording ended. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The weight of the truth pressed down on us, suffocating and heavy. Then Courtney snapped. She let out a scream of pure primal rage. It wasn't the scream of an innocent woman. It was the scream of a predator who had been trapped. "You old bastard," she shrieked. She lunged at me. Her hands were clawed, reaching for the remote, reaching for my throat. She moved fast, fueled by adrenaline and terror. She wanted to silence me. She wanted to destroy the projector. She wanted to burn the room down if she had to, but she never reached me. A massive shape stepped out from the shadows near the wall. It was Mr. Henderson, the contractor. He moved with the speed of a man half his age. He stepped in front of me, blocking Courtney's path like a brick wall. He caught her by the shoulders. He didn't strike her. He just stopped her. His grip was firm, unyielding. "Sit down," Mrs. Vance Henderson growled, his voice deep and rumbling like thunder. "You are done." Courtney struggled against him, kicking and screaming profanities that made her mother turn away in shame. "Let me go. You work for us. Get your hands off me." "I don't work for you," Henderson said, shoving her back toward a chair. "I worked for Claudette, and you killed my friend." Courtney stumbled back and fell into the chair. She looked around the room, wild-eyed, seeking an ally, seeking an escape. She looked at Tyrell. Tyrell, do something. He is lying. Help me. Tyrell looked at her. Tears were streaming down his face. He looked at the woman he had married, the woman he had let lead him by the nose for 10 years. You killed her, he whispered. You killed my mother. I didn't. Courtney sobbed. It was mercy. She was sick, Tyrell. We needed the money. We needed to live. We needed to live, Tyrell screamed, jumping up and overturning his chair. She was my mother. He moved toward her, his hands balled into fists. Mr. Stone, the lawyer, grabbed Tyrell, holding him back. Don't do it, son, Stone said, his voice shaking. Do not add assault to this. It is over. I stood at the head of the table, watching them turn on each other. I watched the Hamiltons huddled in the corner, looking at their daughter as if she were a stranger. I watched Mr. Sterling quietly packing his briefcase, signaling his team to leave, trying to slip away from the disaster. No one leaves, I said, my voice booming. Sterling froze his hand on the doorknob. This is a crime scene, I said, and you are all witnesses. Courtney looked up at me. Her makeup smeared her eyes full of hate. You think you have won? She spat. You think this proves anything? It is just recordings. It is circumstantial. I have the best lawyers in the city. You have nothing, Jeremiah. You are just a sad old man with a home movie. I looked at her. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was gone, replaced by the cold certainty of justice. I don't need lawyers, Courtney, I said, and I don't need a jury to know what you did. I pointed to the door, because I didn't come alone. As if on cue, sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder and closer. Blue and red lights flashed against the windows, cutting through the gloom of the storm outside. Courtney froze. She looked at the window, then back at me. You called the police, she whispered. I didn't just call them, I said. I sent them the video an hour ago, and I sent them the audio. And I sent them the report from the forensic lab confirming that the vial in the garage contained epinephrine, not insulin. I leaned over the table, getting close to her face. They aren't coming to ask questions, Courtney. They are coming with cuffs. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. The door burst open. Uniformed officers poured into the room, their hands on their holsters. Police, everyone stay where you are, a sergeant shouted. Courtney slumped in her chair, her head falling into her hands. The fight went out of her, leaving only a hollow shell. I looked at Tyrell. He was weeping silently. I looked at Kendrick, still on the floor. My family was destroyed. My wife was dead. My sons were broken. But the truth was out. And the walls of this office, which had hidden so many secrets, were finally clean. The uniformed officers moved into the room with the heavy precision of a tactical team securing a perimeter. They did not draw their weapons, but their hands hovered near their belts, and their eyes were locked on Courtney and Tyrell. The room was thick with the smell of expensive perfume turning sour on sweating skin mixed with the metallic tang of fear. But Courtney did not go down quietly. She did not crumple. She was a fighter, a cornered rat who thought she could screech her way out of a trap. She stood up, knocking her chair backward. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. This is a setup, she screamed, her voice cracking. That video is a fake. He made it. He hired someone to make a deep fake. You can do that now. You can make anyone say anything. It is AI. It is all computer tricks. She turned to the police sergeant who was approaching her. Officer, you cannot arrest me based on a cartoon my father-in-law made on his laptop. I am a Hamilton. My parents are standing right there. We are respectable people. This man is senile. He is vindictive. He is trying to frame me because I put him in his place. The sergeant stopped in front of her. He was a large man with a face like carved granite. He looked at her with zero sympathy. Ma'am, we have the forensics from the lab. The vial matches the poison. That proves nothing, Courtney yelled. She grabbed Tyrell's arm, dragging him to his feet. Tell them, Tyrell. Tell them your father is crazy. Tell them we are the legal guardians. Tell them we own this building. Tyrell looked at me. His eyes were hollow. He looked like a man who had woken up in a nightmare he built himself. He didn't speak. He couldn't speak. Courtney shook him. Say something, you coward. She turned back to the police. We have rights. We have a power of attorney. We are the sole heirs to the Blackwood estate. Even if that video was real, which it is not, you cannot take our property. This building belongs to us. The house belongs to us. We have the papers ready to sign. We have the intent. She was clinging to the money like a life raft. She thought that if she owned enough, if she was worth enough, the laws of men wouldn't apply to her. She thought her inheritance was a shield that could deflect a murder charge. I demand to speak to my lawyer, she shrieked, looking around for Mr. Stone. Stone was backed into a corner, trying to make himself invisible behind a potted plant. Stone, handle this. Tell them they cannot arrest the owners of this property. I watched her flail. I watched her try to command the room even as the handcuffs came out. She really believed it. She believed that because she had married my son, she was entitled to my blood, my sweat, and my life. She believed the world owed her everything she could grab. You do not own anything, Courtney, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. She whipped her head around to look at me. Shut up, old man. You are dead. You just don't know it yet. We are taking everything. We will fight this in court. We will sue you for defamation. We will bury you in legal fees until you beg us to stop. We have the will. We have the bloodline. I shook my head slowly. It was time for the second hammer to drop. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't the police. A tall man in a charcoal gray suit walked in. He moved with the silent grace of a predator. He carried a leather briefcase that cost more than Mr. Stone's car. He had silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. It was Attorney Vance, my real lawyer, the man who had helped me build my logistics empire in the shadows. He walked past the police who nodded to him with respect. He walked past the Hamiltons who were huddled together in shock. He walked right up to the table and placed his briefcase on the polished wood. Mr. Vance, Courtney stammered. She knew him by reputation. Everyone in the city knew Vance. He was the lawyer you called when you wanted to destroy your enemies, not just defeat them. What are you doing here? I represent Mr. Jeremiah Blackwood, Vance said, his voice smooth and deep like aged bourbon. And I am here to clarify the matter of the estate you seem so concerned about. Courtney laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. You represent him. He can't afford you. He is a retired engineer on a pension. Vance smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a man who knows he is holding 4 aces. Mr. Blackwood can afford me, Mrs. Vance, he said. In fact, he owns the firm, or rather, the holding company that owns the firm. The room went silent. Courtney blinked. What? Vance opened his briefcase. He pulled out a single thin file. You have been operating under a significant misconception regarding the Blackwood assets, he said. You believe you are fighting for an inheritance. You believe there are millions of dollars in property and liquid cash waiting for you to claim. You believe this building, this office you so lovingly renovated, belongs to Jeremiah Blackwood. It does, Courtney said. It is in his name. We checked the public records. You checked the county tax records, Vance corrected her. Which list the payer, not the beneficial owner. He slid a document across the table. This building, he said, does not belong to Jeremiah. It belongs to a shell corporation called JB Logistics, LLC. The house does not belong to Jeremiah. It is leased from the same corporation. The bank accounts you have been trying to access, the ones you made fake cards for, those are petty cash accounts, allowances, pocket change. Courtney picked up the document. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. She read it. Her eyes widened. This is impossible, she whispered. We saw the statements. We saw the balances. You saw what we wanted you to see, Vance said. Jeremiah Blackwood does not own anything. On paper, he is a man of very modest means. He has no assets to seize. He has no property to transfer. He has no estate to inherit. Tyrell spoke up for the first time. His voice was a dry croak. But the money, Dad. The company. You sold it. You made millions. Where is it? I looked at my son. I looked at the man who had stood by while his wife poisoned his mother because he wanted to buy a bigger house. I did make millions, Tyrell, I said. I made $20 million when I sold the logistics fleet. I invested it. I grew it. Then where is it? Courtney screamed, throwing the paper at me. Give it to us. It is ours. We earned it. We put up with you. We put up with her. We deserve it. Vance pulled another document from his briefcase. It was bound in blue, heavy paper. It looked official. It looked final. This, Vance said, holding it up, is a copy of the irrevocable trust established 5 years ago by Claudette and Jeremiah Blackwood. Irrevocable, Courtney whispered. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. She knew what it meant. It meant it couldn't be changed. It couldn't be challenged. It couldn't be undone. 5 years ago, I said, stepping forward, my wife and I made a decision. We watched you, Tyrell. We watched you, Kendrick. We saw the greed growing in you like a cancer. We saw how you looked at us, not as parents, but as paychecks. We saw how Courtney treated wait staff. We saw how she looked at our furniture. We knew. I took a breath. The memory of Claudette sitting at our kitchen table signing these papers with tears in her eyes was vivid in my mind. We decided that money would destroy you, I said. So we removed it. We put every dime, every asset, every future earning into an irrevocable trust. The terms are strict. No family member can access the principal. Ever. Tyrell fell back into his chair. He looked like he had been shot. 5 years, he murmured. You did this 5 years ago. Yes, I said, before you got into debt, before you started stealing, before you killed her. So, who gets it? Courtney hissed. Who gets our money? If we don't get it, who does? The government. Some stupid charity. I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. No, I said. It is not the government. I looked at Vance. He nodded. The sole beneficiary of the Blackwood Trust, Vance announced, is Ms. Maya Jenkins. The name hung in the air. Courtney frowned. Who the hell is Maya Jenkins? I walked over to the window. I looked out at the city. Maya Jenkins is the daughter of the woman who cleans this building, I said. She is a bright girl. She wants to be a doctor. Her mother died of cancer 4 years ago. Claudette and I took her in. Not into our house, but into our hearts. We paid for her school. We paid for her books. We watched her work 3 jobs to support her little brothers while you two were buying cars you couldn't afford and waiting for us to die. I turned back to them. Maya gets it all. The education fund, the properties, the investment portfolio. When I die, she becomes the trustee. She decides where the money goes, and she has strict instructions. Not 1 red cent goes to anyone with the last name Blackwood. Tyrell started to cry. It wasn't a cry of remorse. It was the cry of a man who realizes he has burned down his own house to find a pot of gold, only to realize the pot was empty, and the house was the only thing keeping him warm. You killed her for nothing, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner of the room. You murdered your mother for a fortune that was never yours. You destroyed your souls for a bank account that was closed 5 years ago. Courtney stared at me. Her face was blank. Her mind had snapped. The reality was too much. She had committed murder. She was going to prison. And she was broke. It is a joke, she whispered. It has to be a joke. You can't do this. We are your family. I looked at the police sergeant. Get them out of here, I said. I am done with them. The sergeant nodded. He signaled his men. They moved in. Courtney screamed as they grabbed her. She fought. She kicked. She spat. But it was useless. They cuffed her hands behind her back. Tyrell didn't fight. He stood up like a zombie. He held out his wrists. He looked at me one last time. Dad, he said. I turned my back on him. I looked at the Hamiltons. They were pressing themselves against the wall, trying to disappear. Don't think you are leaving, I said. Mr. Hamilton gulped. Jerry, this has nothing to do with us. We didn't know. We are victims here too. Vance stepped in front of them. Actually, he said, I have a warrant for both of you as well. It seems your daughter used your personal information to launder some of the money she stole from Mr. Blackwood, and our investigation shows you knowingly accepted funds that were proceeds of fraud. Mrs. Hamilton fainted. She just slid down the wall in a pile of silk and jewelry. I watched as the police hauled them all out, Courtney screaming, Tyrell weeping, Kendrick still cowering in the corner waiting for his turn. The room emptied out. The developers fled. The lawyer Stone ran like a rat. It was just me, Vance, and Henderson, and the ghost of my wife. I walked over to the spot where the wall used to be. I touched the jagged edge of the drywall. It is over, Claudette, I whispered. They can't hurt you anymore. And they didn't get a thing. Vance put a hand on my shoulder. You did good, Jeremiah, he said. You did good. I looked around the empty white room. It felt cold. Burn it, I said. Vance looked at me. What? Sell it, I said. Sell the building, sell the house, sell everything that they touched. I don't want any of it. Put it all in Maya's trust. every last penny. I walked out of the office. I walked out into the sun. I was alone. I was a widower. I was childless for all intents and purposes. But I was free, and for the first time in a month, I could breathe. The sergeant stepped over the tangle of power cords from the projector, his boots heavy on the hardwood floor. He did not look like a man who enjoyed his job, but he looked like a man who was going to finish it. He stood in front of Courtney Vance, towering over her while she sat slumped in the chair Henderson had forced her into. The room was silent, save for the hum of the cooling fan in the projector overhead, which was still displaying her face on the wall, frozen in a pixelated mask of malice. Courtney Vance, the sergeant, said, his voice flat and practiced. "You are under arrest for the first-degree murder of Claudette Blackwood. You are also being charged with elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder against Jeremiah Blackwood. You have the right to remain silent." Courtney let out a sound that was less like a scream and more like a tire blowing out on the highway. It was a sharp, sudden release of pressure. She scrambled up from the chair, her hands flying to her chest. "Murder!" she shrieked. Her eyes were wide and white, showing the rim all around the iris. "You cannot charge me with murder. I am a nurse. I save lives. This is a mistake. That video is a fake. My father-in-law is senile. He created this to frame me because I wanted to put him in a home. Look at him. Look at that old man standing there. He is the crazy one." The sergeant did not blink. He reached for his belt and unhooked the handcuffs. The metallic rasp of the steel was the loudest thing in the world. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," he ordered. Courtney backed away, knocking into the expensive mahogany conference table. "No," she yelled. "No, I will not. You do not understand who I am. My parents are right there. We are the Hamiltons. We own half the commercial real estate in this district. You cannot just put cuffs on me like I am some common criminal." She looked at Tyrell. He was standing a few feet away, staring at the floor, tears running silently down his face. He looked broken. He looked useless. "Tyrell," she screamed, her voice shredding with rage, "do something. Tell them. Tell them I was with you that night. Tell them I didn't go to the house. Be a man for once in your pathetic life." Tyrell did not move. He did not look up. He just shook his head slowly back and forth. "You useless coward," Courtney hissed. She lunged at him, her fingernails aimed at his face. "I did this for us. I did this because you were too weak to ask for your inheritance. You whined about money every single day, Tyrell. You cried about your father holding out on us. I fixed it. I fixed everything for you, and you are going to let them take me." The sergeant grabbed her arm, spinning her around. She fought him, kicking and spitting, but he was stronger. He forced her arms back. The first cuff clicked. Then the second. "I hate you!" she screamed at Tyrell as the officer hauled her toward the door. "I hate you, and I hate your family. You are all garbage. I should have killed the old man myself instead of trusting you to drug him." Her confession hung in the air, raw and undeniable. She had just admitted to the plan in front of a room full of police witnesses. I watched as they dragged her out. She was still screaming, cursing my name, cursing Tyrell, cursing the world for not giving her what she thought she was owed. Her white suit was rumpled, her hair wild. She looked like a demon being exorcised. I felt nothing. No joy, no relief. Just a cold, hollow space in my chest where my heart used to be. She was gone, but the damage she had left behind was standing right in front of me. Tyrell. He was trembling so hard his knees were knocking together. He watched his wife disappear into the hallway flanked by officers, and then he slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes were red, swollen ruins. He looked like the little boy who used to come to me when he scraped his knee expecting Daddy to make it better. But I was not Daddy anymore. I was Jeremiah Blackwood, the man whose wife he had helped bury. He took a step toward me, and then his legs gave out. He fell to his knees on the hard floor, hitting the wood with a sickening thud. He didn't try to get up. He clasped his hands together in front of him in a gesture of prayer. "Dad," he choked out. "Dad, please. I didn't know about the insulin. I swear to God, I didn't know she switched it. She told me Mom had a stroke. I believed her, Dad. You have to believe me." I looked down at him. From this angle, I could see the thinning spot on the top of his head. I could see the gray hairs coming in at his temples. He was a grown man, 40 years old, and he was on his knees begging his father to save him from the consequences of his own greed. "You knew enough, Tyrell," I said, my voice ice cold. "You knew she wanted us dead. You knew she was poisoning my soup on Thursday. You stood in my kitchen and watched me fall, and you searched my pockets for my watch. I was scared, he sobbed, reaching out to grab the hem of my pants. I stepped back out of his reach. She made me do it, Dad. She said we were going to lose the house. She said you were going to disown us. She is manipulative, Dad. You heard her. Heard? She is a monster. I looked at him with a clarity that hurt. She is a monster, I agreed. But she is the monster you chose. You married her, Tyrell. You brought her into our home. And when she told you to set the code on your mother's safe, you didn't use your birthday. You didn't use mine. You used hers. Tyrell flinched as if I had slapped him. That tells me everything I need to know, I said. Your loyalty wasn't to me. It wasn't to your mother. It was to her. You sold us out, Tyrell. You sold your mother for a bigger house and a wife who hates you. Dad, please, he wailed. Don't let them take me. I am your son. The sergeant stepped forward again. He had a second pair of cuffs in his hand. Tyrell Blackwood, stand up, he ordered. You are under arrest for accessory to murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud. Tyrell looked at the cuffs, then at me. His eyes were wide, terrified. He was waiting for me to intervene. He was waiting for Big Jerry to fix it. I turned my back on him. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street where the police cars were flashing blue and red lights against the brick buildings. I heard the officers pull him to his feet. I heard him crying. I heard the metal ratcheting sound of the cuffs locking into place. Dad, he screamed one last time. I did not turn around. I listened to the sound of his footsteps being led away. I listened until the door closed and the silence returned to the room. My son was gone. The boy I raised was dead. The man who left in handcuffs was a stranger who had stood by and watched his mother die. But the room wasn't empty yet. I turned around slowly. Huddled in the corner near the champagne table were the Hamiltons. Beatrice and Richard Hamilton, Courtney's parents. They were trying to make themselves small, trying to blend into the white walls. They were inching toward the door, moving with the slow, deliberate steps of people trying not to attract the attention of a predator. Mr. Hamilton had his hand on the door handle. He saw me looking at them, and he froze. He tried to compose his face into a mask of righteous indignation, but his lip was trembling. Jerry, he said, his voice shaky but trying for authority. This is a tragedy, a terrible tragedy. We had no idea Courtney was unwell. We are just going to go now. This is clearly a family matter and we don't want to intrude. He pushed on the door. It didn't budge. Henderson was standing on the other side, blocking it with his massive frame. You are not going anywhere, Jeremiah said. Mrs. Hamilton clutched her pearl necklace. What do you mean, Jerry? We are victims here too. Our daughter has evidently lost her mind. We need to go home and call our lawyers. We need to figure out how to help her get the psychiatric care she clearly needs. She was already spinning it, already building the insanity defense. I walked toward them. I stopped 5 feet away. I pulled a folded document from my inside pocket. It was the report Mr. Vance, the forensic accountant, had given me that morning. You are not victims, Beatrice, I said. And you are not going home to call lawyers. You are going to the station. Mr. Hamilton puffed up his chest. That is absurd. We haven't done anything. You can't hold us responsible for what our adult daughter does. We have money, Jerry. We have influence. If you try to drag us into this, we will sue you for everything you have. I laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. Sue me for what, Richard? For telling you the truth. I held up the paper. You think Courtney was only stealing from me, I asked? You think she only wanted my money because she was greedy? What are you talking about? Mrs. Hamilton asked, her voice thin. Courtney didn't just need money for a house, I said. She needed money to cover her tracks. Because she has been stealing from you for 3 years. Mr. Hamilton blinked. That is a lie. We handle our own finances. Courtney manages our retirement fund, but she is our daughter. She takes care of us. I unfolded the paper. I read the numbers out loud. On January 4th, a transfer of $50,000 from the Hamilton Family Trust to a shell company owned by Courtney Vance. On February 10th, a withdrawal of $75,000. On March 1st, the liquidation of your entire stock portfolio valued at $400,000. I looked up at them. She drained you dry, Richard. Your retirement fund is sitting at zero. Your investment accounts are empty. She even took a second mortgage out on your house by forging your signatures. That is why she was so desperate for my money. She needed to pay you back before you found out she had bankrupted you. She wasn't killing us to get rich. She was killing us to stay out of jail for stealing from you." Mrs. Hamilton made a sound like a dying bird. She grabbed her husband's arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. "Richard," she whispered. "Richard, tell him he is lying." Mr. Hamilton's face had gone the color of old milk. He stared at the paper in my hand. His mouth opened and closed. The stock portfolio, he wheezed. She said she moved it to a high-yield bond. She showed me the statements. "She showed you what you wanted to see," I said mercilessly. "Just like she showed me. She played us all. She forged the statements," Richard. Mrs. Hamilton cried. "She forged them. We are broke. Oh my God, we are broke." The reality hit them like a physical blow. The arrogance, the superiority, the belief that they were better than the Blackwood family, it all evaporated in an instant, leaving them as nothing more than two broke old people who had been conned by their own flesh and blood. Mr. Hamilton swayed. He reached out for the table to steady himself, but missed. His eyes rolled back in his head. He collapsed, hitting the floor with a heavy, boneless thud. "Richard," Mrs. Hamilton screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. She slapped his face. "Richard, wake up." He didn't move. His breathing was shallow. I looked at them. I felt no pity. They had raised her. They had taught her that money was the only thing that mattered. They had taught her that appearance was everything, and now their creation had devoured them. I looked at Vance, who was standing by the door with the police sergeant. "You might want to call a paramedic," I said calmly, "and then you might want to read them their rights, because receiving stolen funds even from your daughter is still a crime." The sergeant nodded and keyed his radio. I turned away from the heap of ruined nobility on the floor. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked city. The office was quiet again. The shouting was over. The crying was fading. It was done. The cancer had been cut out. But the surgery had left me hollowed out and bleeding. I was alone, truly alone. And the silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. 6 months later, I walked through the heavy steel doors of the state penitentiary. The air inside smelled of bleach and unwashed bodies, a smell that stuck to the back of your throat and refused to leave. I was not there as a father visiting a son. I was there as a witness visiting a convict. I checked my watch. I had been granted 15 minutes. That was all the time I needed to bury the last of my past. I sat on the cold metal stool in the visitation booth. The glass partition between us was thick, scratched by thousands of wedding rings and angry fingernails. I waited. When they brought Tyrell out, I almost didn't recognize him. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by a bright orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 30 pounds. His head was shaved, revealing the shape of a skull I had cradled when he was a baby. But his eyes were the same. They were still shifting, still calculating, still looking for an angle. He sat down. He picked up the phone receiver. I picked up mine. "Hey, Dad," he said. His voice was tinny through the speaker. "You came. I told the guys you would come. I told them Big Jerry doesn't abandon his own." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had held a flashlight while his wife poured poison into his mother's veins. "I am not here to bail you out, Tyrell," I said, my voice flat. "I am not here to put money on your commissary books, and I am certainly not here to pay for your appeal." Tyrell's face hardened. He leaned forward, the chains on his wrists clinking against the counter. "Come on, Dad," he hissed. "You made your point. We are in here. Courtney got life. I got 25 years. You won okay. You destroyed us. Are you happy now?" I didn't answer. I just watched him. "You know this is your fault," he spat. "If you hadn't been so stingy. If you had just told us about the money years ago, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have been desperate. We wouldn't have listened to Courtney. You set us up to fail. You watched us struggle while you sat on millions. What kind of father does that?" There it was, the lack of remorse, the victimhood. He truly believed that my money was his birthright and that by withholding it I had forced his hand. He took no responsibility for the greed that had rotted him from the inside out. "I didn't make you struggle, Tyrell," I said quietly. "I paid for your college. I paid for your wedding. I bailed you out of debt 3 times before you turned 30. I gave you a foundation. You chose to build a house of cards on top of it." "I needed more," he shouted, slamming his hand against the glass. The guard behind him took a step forward, his hand on his baton. Tyrell flinched, pulling back. "I needed more," he whispered, his eyes wet with angry tears. "Courtney needed more. She had tastes, Dad. She had dreams. And you You were just an old man sitting on a fortune you were too scared to spend. You let Mom die in that small house wearing old clothes. You dishonored her. I felt a flash of heat, but I stamped it out. He couldn't hurt me anymore. His words were just noise. Your mother died, loved, I said. She died with a clean conscience. She didn't need Italian leather or French wine to know who she was. You killed her because you thought she was worth less than a building downtown. I didn't kill her. Tyrell pleaded, switching tactics again. It was Courtney. I told you, I was just scared, Dad. She threatened me. She said she would leave me. I did it for love. Doesn't that count for anything? Love, I repeated the word, tasting sour. You don't know what love is. Love protects. Love sacrifices. Love doesn't put a price tag on a heartbeat. I stood up. I had heard enough. I had seen what I needed to see. There was nothing left in him. The boy I raised had been consumed a long time ago, leaving only this hollow, hungry shell. Where are you going? Tyrell asked, panic rising in his voice. Dad, wait. I need help. I need a better lawyer. Vance is killing me in the civil suit. They are taking everything. They are taking my 401k. They are taking the car. They are taking it all, I agreed. Because it belongs to the estate. And the estate belongs to Maya. Maya, Tyrell sneered. The charity case. You are giving my inheritance to the janitor's daughter. You are sick. You are replacing us. I am not replacing you, I said. You replaced yourself. I hung up the phone. Tyrell slammed his receiver against the glass, screaming words I couldn't hear. He was mouthing curses, mouthing pleas, mouthing the name of a father who no longer existed. I turned my back on him. I signaled the guard. As I walked toward the heavy steel door, I felt a lightness in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was the absence of a weight I had been carrying for 40 years, the weight of trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. I didn't look back. I walked out of the prison and into the parking lot where the air was fresh and the sky was wide and open. Tyrell Blackwood was dead to me. He died the day he chose his wife over his mother. The man in the cell was just a stranger serving time for a crime he would never understand. And I had no sons left to visit. 1 week later, I stood on the grassy hill of the Oakwood Cemetery. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of purple and gold. It was quiet here. The wind rustled through the leaves of the old maple tree that shaded Claudette's grave. I knelt down in the grass. The headstone was new granite polished to a mirror shine. Claudette Blackwood, beloved wife, teacher, the heart of our home. I had not put mother on the stone. It was a hard decision, but it was the right one. She was a mother to thousands of students, to Maya, to the community. But to the men who shared her blood, she was just a target. I wouldn't let them claim her in death when they had discarded her in life. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was the old will, the one Tyrell and Courtney had tried so desperately to rewrite, the one that had legally tied me to them. I struck a match. The flame flared bright orange against the twilight. I held the corner of the paper to the flame. It caught quickly, curling and blackening, turning to ash in my hand. I watched the names burn. Tyrell, Kendrick, Courtney. I watched the clauses about trust funds and property distribution turn into smoke. I let the burning paper fall into the metal bowl I had brought. I watched it until it was nothing but gray dust. It is done, Claudette, I whispered to the grass. The house is sold. The buyers are a nice young couple. They are going to plant a vegetable garden in the back just like you wanted. The office building is gone. A tech company bought it. They paid cash. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of damp earth and cut grass. And the money, I said. The money that caused all this pain. It is doing work now. Good work. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. I looked out over the cemetery, over the rows of lives lived and ended. I am not saving it anymore, I said. I am building. I left the cemetery and drove to the east side of town. This was the neighborhood where I grew up, the neighborhood Tyrell and Kendrick had been too ashamed to visit. It was rough around the edges, but it was alive. I pulled up to the construction site. It occupied a whole city block where a derelict factory used to stand. The floodlights were on, illuminating the steel skeleton of a new building rising from the concrete foundation. A sign out front read, "The Claudette Blackwood Center for Engineering and Arts." I put on my hard hat and walked onto the site. It was late, but the crew was still working. They were pouring concrete for the main atrium. "Hey, Mr. Jeremiah," a voice called out. I turned. It was Maya Jenkins. She was wearing a hard hat, and holding a set of blueprints that were almost as big as she was. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright, shining with the same intelligence and fire that Claudette had possessed. "Maya," I said, smiling, "you are working late. You have finals next week." "I wanted to check the specs on the load-bearing wall," she said, tapping the plans. "I think we can open up the lobby more if we use steel beams instead of concrete pillars. It will let in more light." I walked over and looked at the plans. She was right. It was a brilliant adjustment. "Do it," I said. "Call the steel supplier in the morning. Use my name. Tell them we need it expedited." She beamed. "Thank you, Mr. Jeremiah." She looked at the building rising around us. "It is going to be beautiful," she said softly. Mrs. Claudette would have loved the art studio on the second floor. She would. I agreed. She would have been teaching in there every day. Maya looked at me. Her expression turned serious. "I visited Kendrick today," she said. I stiffened. "You didn't have to do that, Maya." "I know," she said. "But I wanted to tell him. I wanted him to know that I am not keeping the money for myself. I told him that every dollar from the trust is going into the center and the scholarship fund. I told him that his mother's legacy is going to send 1,000 kids to college." "What did he say?" I asked. "He cried," she said. "He asked for $50. I shook my head. Even at rock bottom, even in a prison psychiatric ward, he was still a beggar. "I didn't give it to him," Maya said. "I told him the bank is closed." I put a hand on her shoulder. "You are a good girl, Maya. You are the daughter she deserved." We stood there for a moment watching the sparks fly from a welder on the second floor. The sound of construction was loud and chaotic, but to me it sounded like a symphony. It sounded like the future. I walked away from the site, leaving Maya in charge. I trusted her. I trusted her with the money, I trusted her with the vision, and I trusted her with my wife's name. I walked down the street, the city noises washing over me. I was 69 years old. I had lost my wife. I had lost my sons. I had lost the home I lived in for 40 years. By all accounts, I should be a broken man. I should be lonely. I should be bitter. But as I walked under the streetlights, I felt a profound sense of peace. People say blood is thicker than water. They say family is everything. They say you have to forgive because you share DNA. They are wrong. Blood is just biology. Family is who stands by you when the walls crumble. Family is who hands you the brick to rebuild. I had cut out the rot. I had cauterized the wound. It left a scar, yes, a big ugly scar that would ache when it rained. But the infection was gone. I stopped at a corner store and bought a newspaper. I looked at the date. It was a new month, a new season. I thought about the doctor who handed me that note. I thought about Henderson breaking down the wall. I thought about the nurse who read my finger signals. They were my family now. The people who chose to do the right thing when it was hard. I folded the paper and tucked it under my arm. I walked toward my new apartment. It was small, it was quiet. It didn't have a secret room or a hidden safe. It didn't need one. I had nothing to hide anymore. I had the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to tomorrow. Because tomorrow I had concrete to pour, and I had a legacy to build that no one could ever steal. The most painful truth I learned is that blood does not guarantee loyalty. I spent 40 years believing my sacrifice would build strong men, but instead it bred entitlement and greed. True family isn't defined by DNA, but by character, respect, and who stands beside you when the walls crumble. I learned that protecting your peace sometimes requires the impossible strength to cut ties with your own flesh and blood. Never let blind love blind you to the truth. If someone shows you they are a monster, believe them the first time, even if they call you Dad. If you think I made the right choice to honor Claudette, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven them, or would you have done exactly what I did?